I actually had somebody a couple hours ago DM me Brett McMurphy's final top 25. There's only a few problems with that. One would be that I don't care. I don't care about anybody's top 25. Oh, yes, the top 25, that actually makes sense. We will deliver our top 25 that actually makes sense after the national championship game. So never fear, we are here. I did have those thoughts of presenting a top 25 that actually makes sense, which will then a couple weeks later be the composite final top 1 through 133 that actually makes sense. We will rank all the teams, and then, not to confuse anyone, a couple months from now, we will rank all the programs. So sometimes I'm caught having to explain to people that the difference between ranking teams for 2023 and ranking programs, different ranking. So we have separated those two rankings, not to confuse anyone, but somebody had the laughable idea of actually, I'm glad and I'm thankful that they thought of me. And this is no disrespect to Brett McMurphy. I cannot either vouch for the guy as a reputable college football insider, nor would I ever criticize him at this point because I don't know either way. I don't even know who he works for anymore. I know he at one point worked at ESPN, but that's been, I believe, quite a long time ago. I have no idea where Brett McMurphy. And then I glanced at the list, and it took me about 1.3 seconds to see a huge fallacy in his top 25 immediately. And again, even if he had the perfect, which it doesn't exist, it is not a thing, a perfect top 25, I don't want to see anybody else's top 25. So all due respect to Brett McMurphy, all due respect to you if you do your own top 25. Certainly, you can post them on my channel if you'd like. If you'd like to leave that comment and have people give response and feedback to your top 25, by all means, do that. But I just found that kind of amusing because I thought if anybody really knows me that much, they know I don't care to see anybody's top 25. Yet I expect you guys to watch my top 25. Does that make any sense? No, it doesn't. All right. Appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. We saw this news released earlier today. Two huge news items. And so we have titled the live stream appropriately. One would concern, of course, Quinnshon Judkins, Ole Miss running back. And in the midst of Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss program picking up all sorts of help through the transfer portal, the most notable, the most impactful to be expected would be Walter Nolan, who was arguably the number one player in the country coming out of high school, who's had two fairly productive seasons at Texas A&M, who's been not a bust, not a boom to this point as a five-star, as the, again, arguably best player in the country coming out of high school, goes to Ole Miss, and they've picked up all sorts of other tremendous talents there at Ole Miss, but they lose one here with Quinnshon Judkins. So the first thought would be, because I'm not the brightest guy in the world, and this money aspect of college football still kind of trails in my brain. It takes about 3 seconds to catch up. I'm not as quick as some of you, and also some of you younger folks that are on top of this, and this is the world you've grown up in, that I'm thinking, well, the guy plays for Lane Kiffin. I've heard him talk about how much he loves this program. This is a program that gave him a chance, that gave him an opportunity where he was not getting opportunities elsewhere. This was not a prized 4 or 5-star blue chip prospect, Quinnshon Judkins. And Lane Kiffin, of course, saw the talent, and I'm sure the coaching staff, his position coach, saw the talent there in scouting him, gave him an opportunity. He has taken great advantage of it in bursting onto the scene early in 2022 as one of the best running backs in the nation. And here he is going somewhere else. Why? I think we know why. I doubt that it has anything to do with a soured relationship there with Lane Kiffin or the coaching staff or his teammates or looking for a better opportunity, especially considering that this team could challenge for an SEC championship. Shoot, if you challenge for third or fourth place in the SEC next year, you're going to the college football playoff. Got to be this. Got to be this. And if I'm wrong, I apologize, but got to be this. All right, so there's Quinnshon Judkins. There is also, of course, Will Howard, the Kansas State quarterback, who I certainly thought was headed to USC. A lot of publications, a lot of sites pretty much wrote that off as a done deal a couple of weeks ago. And we actually based one of our USC Trojans live shows on Monday about Will Howard coming to USC and being the next quarterback, surpassing Miller Moss on the depth chart and Malachi Nelson, saying, see ya. If you're looking for a transfer quarterback, I wanted to be the guy to replace Caleb Williams. We saw what Miller Moss did in the bowl game against Louisville, firing 6 touchdown passes. And it looked like USC had it all sewn up for one Will Howard to go to Los Angeles. However, we now see after a visit to Columbus, it didn't take long because Will Howard just visited Columbus here in the last 2 days, that he is committed. He has announced this, committed and signed with Ohio State. So now the evaluation there is, how good is Will Howard? How good is he considering what the standard is at Ohio State, what the goals are there? And as we are sandwiched for you in Buckeye Nation, sandwiched between a college football playoff appearance by Michigan, in which they defeated Alabama in the Rose Bowl in the playoffs to give Jim Harbaugh and this program its first college football playoff appearance and win, I should say, and then taking Michigan one step away, and according to Vegas, a pretty decided, not significant, decided favorite. And I'll release my prediction in the next couple of days. I've got a prediction that may surprise some of you, that Michigan is now just one step away from winning a national championship for the first time since 1997. Or if you're a Michigan hater, you would say first national championship, a full national championship since 1948. But since I am not a Michigan hater, that's well established. Somebody actually, I got to dig up this comment. This just came in about a day ago. I've got to dig up this comment that somebody actually is a Michigan fan. And it was obvious from their statement that they've seen much content on this channel, complimented me as I don't know that they called me a Michigan lover. I forget their terminology exactly. So that was interesting to read, but I credit that person for actually keeping their head screwed on straight and actually listening to the content. We appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. It's the Amazon link. It's in the description section. You can help grow and build the channel in a very simple way that doesn't cost you any. It doesn't really alter your life at all in any such way. It's even easier than hitting the like button, because if you're going to shop on Amazon, just use the link that we provide. Please put it somewhere where you will remember it and use it. And it's in the description section of this video and all the videos on every channel. So we put it right there. We put Amazon in caps right next to it. Grab it. Please use it. So since we've got some calls stacked up here, I'm not going to go into my complete soliloquy on Will Howard and what I think of him. I'm sure that will come out at some point. And if we get through the calls, and I still have more to say about Will Howard. And we're going to take a run through the transfer portal. We're going to go to our trusty friends there at 247 Sports. And those folks have done a nice job for us. We credit our buddy Steve Hellwagon at Bucknuts 247 Sports. So he not only delivers for us each and every week on Wednesday during our Buckeye show, but he actually takes the live stream each week, posts it on Bucknuts on 247 Sports, and exposes our little Buckeye show to a pretty vast audience there. So we appreciate Steve doing that for us, that he has taken it upon himself to do that. So we thank Steve so much for that. He's delivered for 250 shows. My goodness, we're going on 5 years of Buckeyes Live. Crazy to think about. All right, let's take our calls because, again, I've got much to say about Quinnshon Judkins beyond what I've said. Will Howard, interesting pickup. Interesting, because I've got to think that there's a split audience of college football fans, and more importantly, because they've got a stake in the game, Buckeye fans, in whether this is a good thing. It can't be a bad thing, but was there one quarterback on the market, meaning Cam Ward, who's now decided to go off to the NFL, that is a difference maker, and the rest of the list just really good quarterbacks? This is by far the deepest quarterback list of quality quarterbacks. And I mean, can start and start capably and not be looking over their shoulder or benched at a prominent Power 5 school. Mississippi State, Arkansas, Kansas State, and the like. This has been the quarterback transfer list in the portal this time around. All right, let's get right to it. And again, we're going to check out the list because it involves a ton of Georgia players, ton of Bama players, of course, that have made their names known here just in the last 24 hours with the Bama loss in the Rose Bowl. We don't have to talk about transfers. If you just want to talk about Michigan, Bama, you want to talk Washington, Texas, or, of course, national championship game, as Michigan's a 4.5-point favorite. We just completed a live stream with Steve Deace from Michigan Podcast. Please check that out if you missed it. If you only got in for the final 10 or 15 minutes, it's like 50 minutes with Steve Deace. So check that out. It's right here on the channel, as well as a conversation we had that was a tremendous conversation with Nelson Hubble of Maize and Blue Review. So check that out as well. That was posted earlier today. On Friday, we've got a conversation coming up with Lars Hansen of Locked On Huskies podcast to get the Washington side. All right, we've got a patient line of callers launched by our guy, Will. Will, what's going on tonight?
What's up, Mark? All right, Mark, these are my quick thoughts on Will Howard. I think he can do well at Ohio State if Ryan Day lets him use his legs a bit more. Because I feel like he's a bit more of a mobile quarterback than what Ohio State's used to, just like a pocket quarterback, like Kyle McCord. So I think if he lets him use his legs, I think he can be successful for Ohio State. But I'm not sure if Ryan Day – I know Ryan Day didn't want CJ to run, so I'm curious to see if he'll let Will Howard run more.
Ryan Day's a smart man. He is football smarter than me, and maybe just flat out smarter than me. He better know the quality and the skill set of the player. And I get that if you're Ohio State and you're going to win 10 of your games without blinking, and you've got 2 other games to really focus on most years, I'm just talking generically, and you've got CJ Stroud and you don't want him banged up or out of the lineup for the rest of the season, and you're facing Rutgers and you're going to win the game by 40 points, then I can understand that as a general direction. I made this statement a couple of days ago, and I was a bit challenged, and I can't remember who challenged me on this. I think it's pretty well known that Ryan Day has told his quarterbacks not to run.
Yeah.
Well, Justin Fields that. Not that they could not run, like he would bench them the second that they ran one play, but he discouraged them from running. Okay, Will Howard, though, when I'm looking at Will Howard and I'm looking at Kyle McCord, I see 2 differences. And actually, one of those differences has been erased because now Kyle McCord's got a full season under his belt.
Mm-hmm.
So going into this season, and the Kyle McCord that Ohio State had to make a choice on being their quarterback was obviously a completely inexperienced quarterback versus Will Howard, who's now played a part of a couple seasons and now has been basically the starter for 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So the experience level going into his Ohio State career is massively different. And hopefully not all quarterbacks and not all players learn from their experience, but most of them do. They get better with experience. So there's one. Number 2 is exactly what you're talking about. Kyle McCord, even if somebody wanted him to run, he shouldn't run.
He's a statue.
Yeah, he's not an athlete.
He's like him and Jack Cohn, I would say he's like similar to a Jack Cohn at Notre Dame.
He's a liability running the football. He should not be running the ball at all, unless it's obvious. There's just, you could drive a truck and you've got 7 yards to gain. It's right in front of you. But Will Howard at least brings that component. But you're exactly right. If Ryan Day has the same approach with Will Howard, then you've negated not his best skill set, but his best skill set that makes him, that at least is a tool in the toolbox that CJ Stroud and Kyle McCord did not have, or you did not allow them to display. And I'm not going to put him in a Justin Fields category as an athlete or a runner, but he's certainly a capable one, Will Howard.
Yeah. Now, if I was Ryan Day, I would have went after Malik Murphy a bit more. I know he doesn't have the experience, but I feel like he's just he would have been like such a perfect fit for what Ryan Day wants in a quarterback. But I understand that he wants the experience, Will Howard or Cam Ward. I know he wanted Cam Ward as well.
You're a Notre Dame guy, and so I'm going to point this toward you. And I think I've made this comment to you before. And I'm going to say now the same thing about Ohio State going forward. Miami's in a similar situation, although they wanted Cam Ward. They went all in on Cam Ward, and now Ward's gone, and they're in a spot where they don't have anything. It doesn't appear. I don't know who's left.
Miami's a mess. Miami is a mess right now.
Well, nobody's left.
That I can think of.
Am I missing somebody?
Caden Salter. They got
yes.
Maybe, but I feel like he's going to go to Auburn. He's going to want to get back with Hugh Freeze. And we've got, and then Malachi Nelson, but I don't know, he's also raw and needs to get developed, I feel like, to be good.
Yes, sure.
And I'm hearing Boise State. I'm hearing he visited Boise State.
Yeah. Yes, he did. And
then he got to go. And then when you go on 247, you got to scroll down. And then there's like Jaden Maeva of UNLV and Jordan McLeod at JMU. I mean, I don't know what the heck. Maybe just use the guy that got Emory something.
Emory Williams. So there's two quarterbacks on the market that have the kind of talent that they are expected to be big time players, but neither of them have experience. Yeah, you got Malachi Nelson. Oh, Caden Salter. He's got experience, but not at the Power 5 level. But now Miami, they could save themselves by signing Caden Salter. But I, along with you, and it only makes perfect sense that he would go to Auburn, and they desperately need a quarterback. The issue that I have, and your team is the poster child for this, in this very short era of transfer portal.
I would have a response, but I'll let you talk.
You know exactly what I'm going to say. Do you get into a position because of the expectations of your program needing to win 10, 11, 12 games, get to the playoff, that you're never going to pull the trigger on the guys that you've signed and are trying to develop? And you're always going to say, no, we need to go out and get somebody experienced.
Well, that's because we had Tommy Rees as our quarterbacks coach. I mean, Tommy's not a great developer of quarterbacks. We finally got Gino Guidugli now, and he did a good job with Steve Angeli. So I'm hoping that he'll do a good job next year with CJ Carr, Kenny Minchie, and Steve. They'll battle it out. And I expect CJ to probably be the quarterback in 2025. CJ Carr, I mean, he's rated just as high as Aaron Nolan. They're neck and neck on 24/7 ranking. So I'm thinking CJ will be the guy next year, and we'll be done with the transfer quarterbacks, is my hope.
And I'm not saying this just about Notre Dame. I'm saying that any program could get into this cycle when, of course, every great quarterback had to have his first start. And I did not see enough out of Lincoln Kienholz. I know people are going to push back on this comment. Yes, he had a horrendous stat line against Missouri. If you watched the game, I don't know that he threw that many bad passes. When he had time to set up in the pocket, he delivered some nice balls downfield. Now, Ryan Day is the only guy that can answer the question, because he's the only guy that's associated with the program and the coaching staff, of course, that are knowledgeable enough to know what they're looking for, number one. Number two, that see it in practice. We don't see it in practice, but Lincoln Kienholz is going to go somewhere and be a starting quarterback somewhere. I'm almost positive.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and I'm not saying he's leaving this year, but if he does not get a shot at Ohio State, he's going to leave and go somewhere and play.
I think Quinnshon Judkins is big for Ohio State, though. it's brutal for Lane Kiffin. I mean, he felt like he had his whole team together, and now he quit. I guess why Ohio State brought up the Brinks truck and money to get him, or maybe he just wants to go to Ohio State.
Judkins. Do we know
Yeah.
that he's going to Ohio State?
Well, didn't you? I thought that's what you said.
No. No, I know nothing about Quinnshon Judkins going to Ohio State. No.
Okay.
He's just in the transfer portal. He's just the big name that came out today. No.
Okay.
No. I do not expect him to be going there. They have running backs. As long as Travion Henderson comes back.
Is he a junior though?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll see. But I mean, I feel like we could make it in the NFL, but the injury history is rough.
And that might be one reason why he wants to leave.
Mm-hmm.
We only have, I believe tomorrow is the 5th. We only have until the 15th, and we're going to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No. Sorry if that title.
Okay, my bad.
No,
Yeah.
it was just Will Howard, comma, Quinnshon Judkins, transfer portal. Yes, that's it.
Now, I know I'm a little bit biased, but in my pick for national championship, I did say Washington would win 38-31. I did pick the Huskies to win. And Jason was in our chat. Jeffrey also picked Washington. And then Jason was just in our chat giving us crap about it. Moves. But I don't know. I just feel like that he'll get it. I think it'll be all if he gets enough time from their Joe Moore winning offensive line. If he gets enough time, I just think those receivers are too good and they'll get separation on Michigan Stevies.
Michael Penix played about as well as anybody can play last Monday night, but he can play that well again. He's good enough to just repeat that performance. Mm-hmm. I don't know that he's going to get that kind of time. Mm-hmm. The 3 places where I really like Michigan over Texas would be pass rush from the outside, cornerback play. And regardless of how good your cornerbacks are, they're not going to keep up with elite receivers. However, they're going to keep up with elite receivers more often than other teams. And then the other thing would be that Steve Sarkisian did a great job this year, but he should have stayed with the running game. And Michigan's they're not going to get away from the running game.
Yeah, I feel like Washington's defense, though, was a little overhated because, I mean, yeah, the numbers were bad, but they play in the Pac-12, which has good offenses, and they were injured a lot of the year. Washington's injured defensive players, and, like, they played pretty well against Oregon and Texas. I mean, they did force Texas behind the chains a bit with the negative plays.
If that's what good-looking defense looks like, sure.
I mean, they're playing an elite offense. I mean, Texas is like a very good offense, and so is Michigan. So I feel like if they can get off the field enough.
They technically held them to 31 points, so that's a reasonable number. They did benefit from some mistake. To your defense, Texas did score their second touchdown on a muffed punt that put them right at the 10-yard line. So that's not on the defense. But Texas had a few other drives where they made mistakes. The one Jadon Blue catch and run and fumble where he picked up about 40 yards and then he fumbled. So they benefited there. Yeah, it was a decent defensive performance. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know that Xavier Worthy was fully ready. We know he wasn't 100%, but he wasn't himself.
One last question, Mark. Are you going to watch the All-American Bowl on NBC on Saturday?
Do I have to?
No.
No, maybe I should. Those usually slip by me and I don't even think about them. There was an All-Star game today, correct? Or was that yesterday?
Yesterday, I believe.
I get them mixed
up.
Under
Armour game.
The Under Armour game was yesterday. And did anything happen that we should know about?
Well, I'm only paying attention to this one, the one on Saturday, because 4 of the top 6 Notre Dame recruits are probably going to start. So that's the main reason I was going to watch it. But
Our Miami guy, Kim Underwood, said that Jeremiah Smith was abusing
I bet he did.
the secondary, which is good to hear.
Yeah, I bet he did. I know the USC guy went crazy in the Under Armour game last year. What's his name? The punt returner.
Oh, the little guy that's so quick.
Yeah.
I got Zachariah Branch. Yes.
Yeah. And then Dante Moore did well in the All-American Bowl last year. I mean, I'm like, wow, this guy's going to be crazy for UCLA. And then this year he wasn't very good. So
there's apparently a very interesting article on 247 Sports, and I don't know if it's behind the paywall or not. It sounds like it's the kind of article that would be, but they had an exclusive interview with Jeremiah Smith, who I guess just really laid out how Miami put the last second, last minute mad rush on him and threw him all sorts of money. And I guess he put names out there in terms of that, but that was going on all signing day, but he still made the wise decision.
That's what happened last year with Oregon. Like Notre Dame lost their top safety to
Peyton Bowen. Sure.
That's brutal, man. He played well for Oklahoma this year too. Yeah. I mean, Xavier Watts played well, but we had Peyton Bowen instead of DJ Brown. DJ left that. Remember that pass at the end of the game? It went right through DJ's hands. And if Peyton was there, maybe he would have caught it. And Notre Dame would have. It's
Notre Dame fans love bringing up that play. Did it really just go through his hands? Wasn't he like leaping extended? It's not like he dropped the ball.
I know.
Did he?
I mean, it's not like he dropped the ball.
I'll have to go back and watch that.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that game caused me so much emotional damage. I was trying not to cry during the post-game show.
Do you think things would
ended, I just got off the StreamYard and started crying.
Well, I'm sorry, Will, that game caused you so much anguish, because I would trade my joy for your anguish, because I don't know that it caused me that much joy. It was more relief.
Yeah. The Duke game was more relief.
Yes. Do you think that Notre Dame's season would have gone differently? And I don't just mean, okay, they would have gone 11-2 and not 10-3 with the Ohio State win, but that would have changed things.
I mean, I think they would have. Maybe it would have. I don't know. I mean, I felt like if we didn't win the Stanford game in 2012, like we probably would have lost to Oklahoma that year and not made it to the championship game. And I felt like it was the same sort of game. Like Notre Dame got the stop against Stanford in 2012, and they did not get the stop against Ohio State in this year. But I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. Well, we have a lot of players coming back in 24, so hopefully we should at least make the 12-team playoff and hopefully make it to those Final Four. But let's see. I mean, we got everyone coming back, and we have a competent coordinator, so and the portal receivers too. So I don't know. I like the chances. We just got to win the first game in College Station, and then we can just hopefully go forward. Have a great year.
All right, Will. Appreciate you.
I took up too much time again, but sorry, people in line. But
no, you're good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Will.
All right.
Have a good night. I believe I've been warned in recent days to guard against possible issues online. So we will take our next call here in 2 seconds. Yes. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Hello, Peter.
Hey, how's it going there?
I am doing just fine. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well tonight. I wanted to talk about a couple things. One, Will Howard's awesome commitment to Ohio State.
Okay, you're happy.
The possibility of Judkins, and then, of course, the national championship game.
Okay.
So we'll start with Will. My buddies, Ohio State group chat that I have, they sent me some tape of Will Howard on Twitter, about a 5.5-minute video, maybe 2 weeks ago. And so I kind of got excited for him back then. And it got me encouraged because he is mobile, like you said. He runs a lot of read option near the goal line, and he's got a cannon for an arm. So I'm pretty darn excited about the prospect of him starting and being a 1-year fix. That really, really does excite me. I was honestly looking forward to KJ Jefferson maybe, but it seemed like Ohio State wasn't very interested in him. So I'm excited for Will.
So, Peter, when you see one of these highlight reels, the only thing I'll say about that is if it's his very best work, then
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with looking at a player's very best work, because then that shows this is the best he can be. This is the very best. This is the ceiling. But also you would like to
Sure.
see the downside. He threw
I definitely
10
do.
interceptions this year.
That makes me want to go watch the TCU game from last year, like the complete game, just to see, okay, what are we actually getting here
Yeah.
in Will? Because you're totally right. I did just see the highlights, and it did get me probably more excited than I should be. But yeah, I want to watch the complete
Texas
game.
game from this year.
What's
That might
that?
be from a talent standpoint in facing the kind of defense that you would want to see him against. And it's obviously this year, not last year. You may
Sure.
want to check out the Texas game.
That's a good point. I think I might do that instead. I just might do that instead. In terms of Judkins, I was sent a tweet from Jackson Dart, kind of being cryptic about Judkins being maybe selfish, and so it kind of makes me, I don't know, not leery, but you can't read too much into a player's tweet. But it was right after Judkins announced being in the portal, and then something about selfish players, and I was like, yeesh.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
You don't know. I don't know, because that could be just coincidental.
Right.
That could be Jackson Dart upset that Judkins left, and Judkins leaving for the same reason that a lot of guys leave, whether they just think they can be better prepared for the NFL somewhere else, or probably in this circumstance, they're able to get more money somewhere else.
Right.
And
Well,
Jackson Dart just didn't like that. Or
I
maybe
think you're dead on of why he's coming. I mean, I think it's got to be NIL. I mean, Ole Miss was a contender for the SEC next season if he stays. Jackson Dart came back. Their defense looks firm, and I was kind of excited to see a new team in the SEC championship game for once. But it definitely seems he's coming after it for the bag.
Yeah, and it's also the type of offense and led by a guy that's going to prepare you for the NFL.
Absolutely. So that was shocking news. I think he won not player of the year in the SEC, but was he freshman of the year in the SEC at one point?
Yes, in 2022.
Okay, yeah.
I don't keep up with stuff like that, but he must have been. I had never heard of him. He was only a 3-star, and he got his opportunity a couple games into the season and just exploded.
Yeah, he's a bowling ball. He's 5'11", 210. I watched a little bit of highlights before I came on the show because there's rumors that he is coming to Ohio State, actually. Okay. Now, those are just rumors, so I'm not reading into them too much. I'm not getting too excited yet. But a lot of players have been in contact with Quinshon, apparently, from Ohio State to recruit him. So we'll see. Now, on to the national title game. I am a Buckeye fan, a diehard, and I really didn't want to prepare myself to watch Michigan play for a national title, but that's the reality, and I think they're going to win it. I think they're going to win it, Mark, because defense wins championships, and in my estimation, their defense is elite.
I think there's a reason they're a 4.5-point favorite, and I think that there's just a few things involved that keeps Washington in that 4.5 range. And one is that Michael Penix is probably the best quarterback and surrounded by arguably the best receivers, and that Washington has consistently played within a score. So even at their worst, and I know that they've played some really bad teams, but they haven't been blown out. So
it's true.
And they're also playing in an atmosphere, a stadium setting that favors Washington. Not that Michigan has an issue with playing in an NFL stadium on a fast track indoors, but it definitely helps Washington.
I'd agree.
They want to eliminate all issues with what could possibly be wind, weather,
rain, whatever.
Grass. Would rather play on carpet than grass. Yeah.
Well, I've only watched Washington play twice, and coincidentally, it was both times they played Oregon. They were both fantastic watches, as you probably know. But their offense is obviously explosive, dynamic. It's elite. It is elite. But Michigan's defensive line is so disruptive. I On the last play of the semifinal versus Bama, I went back and rewatched that painfully and saw that the linebackers for Michigan completely fled the end zone and followed the people that were in motion. And in Milrow, it was just the O line versus the D line, and he had the end zone. But obviously, the D line won in very disruptive fashion, and so that was disappointing for me. But I've accepted the fact that Michigan's playing for a national championship, and that's living where I live. I might have to endure quite a bit of talk this offseason, so we'll see.
So we know where you live now
Mm-hmm.
in terms of a state. Okay.
Yeah. I'm right in the belly of the beast, but
Okay.
it is interesting to be an Ohio State fan in Michigan. So a lot of Michigan fan friends that have been giving me a lot of talk online. So I just have fun with them and try and let it roll off my shoulders. But I really don't want to see them win. But I predict them to win. I think they're the better team and the better defense. And the old adage to me still stands strong. Defense wins championship.
Yes, we will find out. I tend to agree.
Yeah.
Anything else, Peter?
That's all I got for tonight. Thanks for letting me call in. I love the show, and I will continue to support.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
Yep. Bye-bye now.
All right. We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you all stopping by. We believe that with Quinnshon Judkins making his intentions known of entering the transfer portal and Will Howard with his commitment to Ohio State, good time to get on here with all of you and discuss the latest. And of course, Michigan, Washington play a national championship game coming up on Monday night in Houston. We were on live with Steve Day's Michigan podcast this afternoon. Please check out that live stream. It was a good time for 50 minutes. And then also Nelson Hubble, Maize and Blue Review and I got together, and that video is posted as well. Lars Hansen, Locked On Huskies podcast, joining us on Friday. We got our buddy Jackson joining the show.
How's it going, Mark?
It's going pretty well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Just get ready for Monday night. I'm excited about it.
I know it.
It's going to be fun watching a little bit of Michigan, Washington. I mean, it was funny though, like the last time Washington won a natty, I believe they played Michigan for the Rose Bowl that won it all in 91. So
yes,
that's pretty cool right there. But I wanted to go over a little bit about Quinnshon Judkins, and I got to be honest, I was shocked. I was just shocked. I'm like, why would you want to leave Ole Miss? I guess you see something better. I mean, who knows?
it's got to be money related.
That money.
It's just got to be. Well, it doesn't have to be, but I can't come up with anything else. He's being prepared for the NFL in a good place at Ole Miss, and they're doing good things there in recruiting in the transfer portal, and they are one of the main contenders for an SEC championship next year.
Yeah, I mean, if that were me, but that's just me. I'd want to be one of the reasons why Ole Miss wins their first SEC title since 1962. I mean, I know Quinshon's not thinking about stuff like that, but if I were in his shoes, I'd want to be able to say, hey, I was there when Ole Miss won their first SEC title since 1962. That'd be pretty sweet right there, but that's all right. I mean, knowing how we got a 12-team playoff next year, I mean, Ole Miss can basically play their way into a playoff spot. So
yeah, I would like to be able to figure something out with this 12-team playoff to where conference championships are still going to be important.
yeah, That's for sure. I mean, let's be real. Like the conference titles are going to get you like the top 4 spots, but then if you're not, you're basically going to get that at large bid. So it's kind of like a wild card team. I will say I'm pretty excited to see where Ohio State got Will Howard. I just hope he's got enough weapons for 2024.
You don't think he'll have enough weapons?
I said that I hope he's got enough weapons because, I mean, I've got a feeling that he can have a pretty good season in 2024 with plenty of weapons.
Oh, he'll have plenty of weapons.
Yeah, it's going to be big right there. I mean, I think they're going to be really happy with him because, I mean, after seeing what he did at K-State over in 2022 and 2023, it's going to be a beautiful year right there. But I'm just curious about Cam Ward, trying his luck in the NFL draft, which, I mean, I wish him a lot of luck, but I wish he would have played one more year in 2024 elsewhere.
Well, before I get to that, Jackson, just in regards to your thoughts about Will Howard doing good things at Ohio State and Ohio State fans being happy with him or something to that effect that you made a comment, I would simply answer that by saying if somebody could tell me right now what Ohio State is going to accomplish in 2024, I could let you know how happy the fans are going to be with him, because it's certainly going to be less about throwing 35 touchdowns or gaining X number of yardage. And it's going to be more about Michigan, a Big Ten championship, and more so how deep into the playoffs did he get them?
That is true. It's true indeed. And I know that there are people talking about how USC was going to get Howard, but then it was after what we saw from the Holiday Bowl, I kind of figured they'd be happy with Miller Moss, and USC Nation's pretty happy with Miller Moss.
Well, I guess they are. I don't know. I don't know that it's important whether they are. It's important what Lincoln Riley sees. And I don't know if the Will Howard situation broke down because of Will Howard or because of USC and Miller Moss's one performance against a somewhat depleted Louisville defense.
Yeah. I just wonder where the Liberty quarterback is going to be going to. I forget his name. It's
Caden Salter. Yes.
Caden Salter. Yeah. I wonder where he's going next.
So we've got Miami, who wanted a transfer quarterback, and they've missed out on Cam Ward. They kind of put all their eggs in one basket. So I have to think that Will and I were discussing the possibility of Auburn and Hugh Freeze, who, of course, recruited Caden Salter.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a pretty good get right there. Cade Salter at Auburn. I mean, he'd be pretty good there.
Yeah, they need somebody desperately.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, with Miami putting all their eggs in one basket, that's really hurting them. I mean, they really should have prepared for other options besides Cam Ward. That's going to hurt them instantly.
Especially since KJ Jefferson made a decision to go to UCF. You would think that Miami could have had KJ Jefferson.
Exactly. I mean, that's just you got to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, and D through Z. That's all it takes. And I will say, yesterday's Buckeyes live show was pretty awesome right there. So I'm gonna put it in the chat again.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
you're
that.
welcome. It was on Buttnuts 247 from 247 Sports from Buttnuts 247's very own Steve Hellwagon. Well, I mean, it's the least I could do. I mean, I wasn't able to show up on the chat for the Steve D show today. I'm sorry I missed that, man.
Well, you can always go back and check it out. It's well worth the listen. Steve was in his prime form as usual. And So I appreciate him coming on.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing some more Lars Hansen tomorrow night. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, we'll get Lars on here. I don't know if I'm going to tape that or go live. Got to decide that. So we will let everyone know.
Yeah. And special edition with Wolverines live tomorrow night is going to be an awesome one.
That's right. Our guy John is firing up a special edition. There it is, Michigan Wolverines live. So everybody join John. And that's a Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time delivery.
Well, and it's like Mark said, you can also check out the Michigan Washington preview live with Steve Deese right here on the chat. So it's a very great discussion, and it can help everybody pick the winner for the national championship.
Yes, we will make that
mean,
selection here soon.
I will say I'm actually pretty excited about it because, don't get me wrong, I am a little sad that Bama's not in the Natty, but at the same time, though, I know that this is great for college football that we can have a little competition, especially with this year's national championship being the first one without an SEC team since 2014. And wouldn't you know it, it's ironic that this is the first national title without an SEC team has a Big Ten Pac-12 team in it. That's pretty cool right there.
Good point. Good point. So if you're following everyone, Jackson's pointing out that we had Ohio State, Oregon in the very first college football playoff national championship game. Then we've gone 9 consecutive or 8 consecutive years. And now we have reached the end of an era for this 10-year 4-team playoff. And SEC teams had reached the national championship game for 8 consecutive years until this year. And now, again, we've got the Big Ten and the Pac-12 getting together.
Now I just want to see a future national championship with an ACC versus a Big 12 team.
Okay. Don't hold your breath.
I know. That's why I said I want to, because I know it's not happening soon.
If it does happen, Jackson, what would be your guess on which 2 teams would show up for that?
Man, that's a good one. I'm really thinking on this one. So I guess it would be like either a Florida State or a Clemson versus Well, if Arizona can manage to keep Jed Fish, maybe Arizona or like Utah.
Arizona in the national championship game.
If they can keep Jed Fish.
All right.
Yeah.
Anything else, Jackson?
That's about all, but I'll probably see if I can wish upon a star for a future ACC Big 12 national title. Be like, oh, wherever you are, I'm wishing for a future natty with an ACC Big 12 game. That'd be cool.
All right, Jackson.
But Mark,
Appreciate
thank you for having me. Thank you for having me on. Stay safe, stay warm, and may tomorrow night be an awesome Friday night.
All right. Again, Michigan Live with John, special edition, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Before I take the next call, I saw a tweet posted by Fox Sports. And actually, I would not have seen this tweet because I do not follow Fox Sports or Fox College Football. Not that I've got anything against Fox College Football because, of course, I watch a ton of their games. But I just thought this was rather stupid. And I responded to the tweet that it was stupid that Fox Sports or Fox College Football, whatever the Twitter account was, posted something that the future Big Ten went 2-0 in the playoff, and the future SEC went 0-2 in the playoff. First issue with that is, could we start posting all sorts of graphics about in 20 whatever future Big Ten teams were doing this or future SEC teams were doing that? No. Washington's a member of the Pac-12. What they have accomplished this year has been as a member of the Pac-12. And yes, does it bode well for their success and therefore the Big Ten's success in having another accomplished program going forward? Yes. But the Big Ten, and if any Big Ten fans lay claim to this in any such way, I'm going to give you a very gentle slap across the brow that make any kind of claim to a national championship because Washington wins the national championship as a member of the Pac-12. They're not a member of the Big Ten. And likewise, Texas will be a member of the SEC next season. And I can guarantee that there's only one simple reason why Fox Sports posted that information. And that's because Fox Sports has the Big Ten contract. If Fox Sports, they should be journalists at these places. If they were truly journalists, I'm kind of turning into a journalist of sorts. So I used to be a journalist a long, long time ago. I no longer claim to be a journalist. It's not my responsibility to be a journalist here. But I got to tell you, the more and more that I see crap spewed out there, I think of myself as being showing more integrity as a journalist than all these other places. Because we know that if Alabama and Texas had won those games, that Fox was not going to make a post that said future Big Ten teams went 0-2 in the playoff and future SEC teams went 2-0 in the playoff. So that is being fraudulent. That is just being fake, fraudulent, stupid, moronic, just dumb. And we don't know if ESPN had the tables been turned and the results. Otherwise, whether they would have made some kind of similar boast. It's just a dumb thing to post. It's just stupid. And I pointed that out. All right. Let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We got the real MVP on here.
Hey, Mark, how you doing this Thursday evening?
I am doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Will Howard as Ohio State's quarterback, I mean, cool. I mean, that's not the big name I thought they were going to get. Is it a horrible quarterback? No, but is it in line with C.J. Stroud and the rest of them elite quarterbacks? Probably not.
Probably not.
I'm honestly, I would have gone after Cam Ward. That's who I would have targeted. I think he's pretty good. He's much better than Will Howard, in my opinion.
Cam Ward's going to be playing in the NFL.
I know, but
it appears.
I don't know if Ohio State tried to make a move, try to offer him some NIL money, because that's all to me what this is about. This is all just a game of who has the biggest bags. I mean, look at Ole Miss. There's a reason they're getting all these great players, and I'm pretty sure it's not because the state of Mississippi has anything that Ohio State or Alabama doesn't have.
Absolutely true. They did lose one of their best players today.
I get that, Mark, but they're not exactly hurting in the transfer rankings, Mark.
No.
For anybody that believes that out there, Mark, I've been told this by plenty of Michigan fans. Since Michigan beat Alabama by 7 points, recruiting rankings don't matter. The SEC's down the toilet and it's over. I had a Michigan fan tell me going 11-1 in the SEC is basically the same as going 8-4 in the Big 12 and ACC. So I guess we're just over. It's just over for us. We should pack our bags and go home, Mark.
I tell you, did real. I had somebody tweet something at me, some kind of nonsense about that. Well, I guess this means recruiting rankings don't mean anything. See? I'm like, am I going to blast this person or am I going to ignore them? I am going to ignore them because they're just flat out ignorant. So if anyone out there does not believe that recruiting rankings don't matter, then they're just flat out, they don't know what they're talking about. I will be as
well, if you want to highlight
possibly
the comment by Michigan versus the World as an example, and go on your rant that you were about to go on, you can please do that. He was also the guy that told me going 11-1 in the SEC is the same, basically going 8-4 in the ACC/Big 12 this year. So,
Are we talking about the most recent post that he made here?
yes, it says recruiting rankings no longer matter.
Oh, why can't I? Oh, okay. My little feed here was locked up. There we go. Oh man, I've got to spin forward about 45 minutes. We'll get to it. So, where are we with Michigan in the world? Oh, there we go. Oh, that's NCAA playoff. There we go. So Michigan versus the world. We appreciate you being here. Hope you know that. See you here all the time. Yes, they do matter. Oh, they just suddenly, okay, so as of 5 p.m. Eastern time on January 1st, they did matter, and now they no longer matter. I just have no response to that. I just can't. Again, how do I be kind? Lower myself to that type of argument. It's just.
Well,
Yes,
the thing is, there's reasonable Michigan fans like John DiAdamo. He's a knowledgeable, reasonable Michigan fan. He's not a troll, okay? And he even asked me about this. Hey, what do you think about recruiting rankings? And I'm like, 1 year of data doesn't prove the whole narrative wrong. I mean, in statistics, there's outliers all the time.
And let's also take it in the other direction. Okay, so Michigan could have had the 60th best recruiting classes the last 4 years and still been competing for a national championship. Since they don't matter, they could be recruiting the same guys as Akron U and playing in the national championship game because they don't matter. It doesn't matter. They could be recruiting at the Boston College level of number 65 in the country. I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, it just don't make no sense. And can you address the SEC is also trash as well? I found it funny Michigan fans were saying this because if it's true the SEC is just garbage, then Washington should win this game by like 8 touchdowns because they barely beat up on a trash team in Alabama.
Before I address that, Daryl, the only way I can possibly surmise that there's any true understanding in this by people that make those comments is that maybe they misconstrue what we're all saying in that they think that if you have the number one recruiting class in the country, let's say 4 consecutive years, that you have to finish number one for that to be a valid ranking. And then if you're the number 2 team in the country in recruiting, you have to finish number 2, and that it is a perfect correlation, that there is no way if you're the number 6 team in recruiting over the course of 4 years, there's no way you can win a national championship if the recruiting rankings matter. Therefore, if you're in any way able to ascend past your recruiting ranking to develop players and play a little bit past that to win better, or like Texas has been for 15 years up until this year, not played up to your recruiting ranking, then that just proves everything. I don't know what these people are looking at. I don't get it.
Well, they believe they can have these bad, I'm going to say bad in quotes, recruiting classes and just outdevelop everybody else into winning the national championship repeatedly. That's my only assumption that I can make off this, that this formula can work long term. And that's exactly, they have 0 national championships in 25 years, right, Mark?
Yes, they do. As of right now, that may change in a couple days.
Right. Washington also has 0 national championships in 25 years, and they don't recruit well either. I mean, the teams who recruit well generally do better than the teams that don't recruit well. This shouldn't be shocking, but apparently it is.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I know that the first statistic I'm going to give is completely fact. Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State, or it might be in the order of Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia, have the 3 best records in college football over the last 10 years. That is a fact. Okay. I believe that those three schools have the best composite talent rankings as well.
I believe you're correct. I'm quickly looking up for it.
If not, it's off by one.
No, you're right. They have the three best.
Okay. Is this complete coincidence?
Apparently, and Mark, there's some Michigan fans in the back room that want to talk. So if you would like to bring them on, Biggs and John want to explain themselves to their logic. So I would love to hear this logic.
Okay, before we get to them, we're going to approach the trash comment about the SEC. Folks, if you're just being a fan and you're so sick of the SEC winning and you're so overjoyed about the result on Monday night, more power to you. Absolutely. Relish in a victory that is banishing the SEC from the national championship game for the first time in 9 years. That is great. Relish that. But you again understand what you're saying by saying that a league and that a team that you defeated by the narrowest of margins is trash. I don't know what that's saying about your team or your conference. I guess everyone in the entire country is trash. Everybody. All right, let's bring some folks in here. We've got John and we've got our buddy Biggs. And I guess I'm just going to go get myself a beverage and kick back and listen to you guys go at it.
John, you can go. I just had a quick comment. Hey, Mark, first off, I haven't talked to you in a while. How you been, bud?
I'm doing just fine. Happy New Year. Great
Happy
to
New
have
Year
you.
to you. Hope you and your family had a good one.
Happy
you
New
well,
Year.
You as well, John.
I just wanted to address, so Daryl, I think that there was some nuance that might have gotten missed in the discussion there. So all I was saying, Daryl, is that we now have a new data point. And the new data point is that in the national title game, we have a grand total of 2 5-stars playing. And you can say that that's an aberration. You can say that that's whatever it is. I'm saying it's a data point that may show that recruiting rankings may mean slightly less, and NIL, transfer portal, 5th-year seniors, 6th-year seniors, all of this that's happening, there could be that shift. And so, yeah, is it fair to, can we agree that there can be both things happening where recruiting doesn't mean the end all be all now that we have NIL incentivizing people to stick around, et cetera, et cetera?
So I want to make sure I get this right. Steve Dace used a similar analogy when they played Alabama. I just want to see if you agreed with it. So Michigan would be similar to a mid-major team in March Madness, where they've got the 5th-year seniors and they're going up against a recruiting powerhouse in like Duke, Kansas, Kentucky, and they pull off an upset. Is that what you're comparing this Michigan team and saying, hey, that's the model we're following?
Sort of. I mean, I'm not much of a basketball person, but we can roll with it.
Okay, but my point is for Michigan fans acting like this is a repeatable strategy to be successful and to be the next dynasty. I just don't see that working.
What realistic Michigan fans are saying now? Are you just going off people in the comments that are just saying silly stuff? Because
I'm just inferring it off of what the Michigan fans are saying. The SEC's terrible. The recruiting rankings don't matter. Michigan's the best development team in the country.
This is why recruiting rankings matter. This is why Alabama, Georgia typically are winning the title. Only issue I had is for 30 days I heard that Michigan is 18-1 on 5-star recruits. So we're going to lose 35-0 at halftime, 56-28 overall. Ridiculous comments like that deserve a little bit of rebuttal back to you when you say something like that. That's all I'm saying. What you're saying is, if someone says recruiting rankings don't matter, they don't know what they're talking about in college sports. They matter, but they also play the games for a reason. This is why they play the
I can agree with you with that. Yeah. My only reason I went that high of score was because of how past playoff games have indicated. If this was a regular season game, it wouldn't have surprised me Michigan won.
And
I just went off of the past history of the playoffs, and most times when we have the playoffs, the more talented team crushes the less talented team. Like 2019 LSU, they struggled in the regular season, but they creamed Oklahoma. And Oregon dominating their opponent, Ohio State beating Alabama.
See, if you would have came on here and like for Mark instance, I saw Mark's score, right? He said it's going to be close and probably a 10+ point game. That makes sense, but to just come out and say 1% chance, 35-0 at halftime, 56-28 overall, that's just ridiculous. Like I think you were trolling at that point.
I didn't say 56-20. I changed it to 42-3. So I just want to get that.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you for that. But that was my only issue.
Because I want to address your 2019 example. We're not in 2019 anymore. There's NIL. There's the transfer portal expanded. It's a different era of football. We need to realize that. So I actually agree that in 2019, recruiting rankings meant a crap ton. And you had a couple of teams that were hoarding most of the 5-star talent. Alabama, Georgia. You get LSU in there every now and then. You get some others in there now and then. Ohio State had a lot of 5 stars. That's about it. I mean, you don't really have. You had a couple of schools that got all the 5 stars. Now you have expanded transfer portal. You have relaxed rules. Alan Bowman just got a 7th year of eligibility. I mean, this is a new era of college football. Well, Alan Bowman's going to be doing his 7th year. He's going to have a doctorate practically.
Go ahead, MVP. Go ahead.
Yeah, that stuff's the 7th year stuff. That was because of COVID. That type of stuff's going to go away in the future. That's
not only did Michigan beat Alabama, that has way more talent rankings than Michigan. Michigan has beaten Ohio State, who recruits way better than Michigan has. Like they've done it back to back, right? They beat 2 teams that recruit way better level than we do. We typically recruit 8 to 15. That's not that big of a margin, but Ohio State always top 5, top 3 in recruiting.
Right, but the reason I didn't believe in the Ohio State win was because in 2021, Michigan dominated Ohio State. They got crushed by Georgia. In 2022, Michigan dominated Ohio State, lost to an inferior TCU team. This year, I would argue Michigan played worse than last year than against Ohio State.
Well, I think
had to play a better opponent.
Ohio State also improved their defense. That was their problem. Their defense was their problem the last two
right, but
years
their offense regressed significantly because of their quarterback. I even told John, I said I would have been more confident in the 2022 team beating this year's Michigan team than this year's Ohio State team had.
And we can all agree, too, just because you come in as a 5-star doesn't mean you play as a 5-star.
Correct.
Right? Because, like, I know Smith from Ohio State. He had, 2 sacks, 3 sacks in the Cotton Bowl. I didn't see him do anything during all season.
Jack Sawyer.
Jack Sawyer, thank you. I didn't see him do much during the season. I don't know. I saw some of his stats. What do you have, like 2-3 sacks all year? And he had 3 sacks in that game. JT, I keep hearing about JT, but only game they ever talk about is that game against Penn State in 2022. And he's a 5-star.
Okay. The only thing I'll say to that is you are pinpointing specific players. If you are a 5-star, you have a 40+% chance of playing in the NFL.
Agree. No, true.
I'm speaking, these are facts.
Yes.
If you are a 4-star, you have about a 12 to 14% chance. And if you're a 3-star, you're down to like 3 to 4%. So there is something to recruiting and playing 5-star athletes. Do they all turn out? Of course not.
Oh, I agree with that 100% on that. I think, but I do take what Day said. Like, what if Michigan gets a 3 to 4-star recruit? By the time they're in their 3rd year, they're playing as a 5-star recruit. Development makes a big part of this.
Yeah.
And Michigan has a load. I mean, they tons of seniors, tons of returning players, and that's why Michigan was able to do what they did at Alabama. Yes, we don't have the 5-stars Alabama has, but we develop players, and those guys are playing like 5-stars now.
Well, but I'm going to give you a sneak preview of tomorrow's special edition I'm planning to give a Leaders and Best Award to Ben Herbert, the strength and conditioning coach, because when you talk about player development, I talked to one of the new freshman tight ends, Zach Marshall, a few weeks ago. He was talking about, he answers to Herb. He calls him Herb, just the same as he answers to his tight ends coach and Harbaugh. It's like a triad, and they really have that culture of getting better every day. We saw that against Alabama. The culmination of years of Ben Herbert and what he's instilled in the program. So strength and conditioning, combined with experience, that can help bring a 3 or 4 star player up a notch.
Well, I saw a funny post where it said Connor Stallions wasn't what changed Michigan. It was Ben Herbert what changed Michigan.
Yeah,
the last 3 years, his development of his conditioning of players. But with that being said, my only issue with MVP, what you're talking about is true. Tyler, rankings matter 100%. When I heard 35-0, 1% chance, 49-3, whatever it is, I don't honestly believe that you believe that when you said that. I think you were just trolling.
I believed it just because of the past results of the playoff. It had nothing to do with how good Michigan was. It was just they played.
It did after they lost, and after they won. You called in on John's show, and you said, "Well, if Michigan loses to Washington, or at that time we didn't know who it was." You're like, "Well, they're basically TCU." That's what
I said. That's the way they could be perceived. They haven't. I mean, to me, it's not. They won a playoff game, but Michigan fans are acting like the entire rules have been changed because they beat Bama by 7.
No, listen, I'm a realistic Michigan fan. I've been a Michigan fan for 30 plus years. When I was watching that Alabama game, I was just waiting for us to blow it because that's typically what Michigan does. I mean, I'm honest about it. I mean, I go back to the Texas Rose Bowl. We had a 10-point lead against Vince Young like 8 minutes ago. What did we do? We blew the lead, right? I was just waiting for it to happen because I'm used to it. I'm enjoying this victory. I'm not saying silly stuff like rankings don't matter or this is the new thing that's going to happen. I'm just going to enjoy every minute of this at why I can. Because next year, I don't know what next year is going to bring, especially with a 12-team playoff, all these new teams coming in the Big Ten. I mean, Ohio State now has Cal McCord Part 2. It's like it's going to be, who knows what's going to happen. So,
hey guys,
let me ask you all.
I'm gonna bounce. Is it okay, Mark? Can I put up the banner real quick of the?
Absolutely.
Let's see. I can't find it.
I wanted to mess with Mark real quick though, but just to mess. On tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, we have. There we go. You're probably on a different folder. We have 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be doing a special edition because I missed Tuesday night show. I've been out with tonsillitis. It's not fun. So my voice might still be a little off, but we're going to have the kind of review of the Rose Bowl. I'm going to give out Leaders and Best Awards, and we're going to have Tony Altimore and he's coming in. He was the host of the Pac-12 chat show live this season. And he and I are going to break down Washington and the matchup between Michigan and Washington. It's going to be a great show, and I hope everybody can make it. Awesome. You have a good one, John.
Later, everybody. Go Blue.
Thanks, John.
Bye.
Later. Mike, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Oh, go for it, bud. I'm here.
Okay, so next year with the 12-team playoff, okay, there is a possibility this is the worst Alabama team, in my opinion, since 2008. They couldn't even snap the ball properly all year. That's how bad they were. And
but before you get going there, I was told before Michigan played Alabama that this Alabama, they just beat Georgia, the best team of the last 2.5 years. They beat them. So they weren't.
Oh, I said that as well. But I also said that Alabama, this is the worst Alabama team since probably 2007. I even told Mark 3 things can be true. This is the best Michigan team since 97. This is the worst Alabama team since 07, and Alabama could win this game by 3 touchdowns. So I've said this before. My point is, if you're going to a 12-team playoff and Michigan beats Bama, then they got to turn around and play Georgia. And then they turn around and beat Clemson. If you're a significantly less talented team than all 3 of them, does depth become an issue at that point? Because that would be my concern.
Well, because Michigan is deep in certain positions. Like our defensive line is deep. I think we have the deepest defensive line there is in college football. So we're able to rotate 5 starters all game, 4 to 5 starters all game. But you're right. I don't think no one knows how this 12-team playoff is going to go down, because any team could have that issue. Like you have to run a gauntlet now, right? Like even Georgia. Like I'm interested to see how it happens. And Michigan could have a completely different team next year. And I think the stars align this year for Michigan to be where they're at. I'm just being honest about it, right? We have all these returning players that came back for a certain purpose. And next year is going to be a different outlook. We understand with the 12-team playoff and then Michigan. So I can't honestly answer that question because I don't know what it's going to look like.
Well, that's fair. I think there are some paths where getting to the Final Four is significantly easier than others. I've been looking at it, and if you win your conference, okay, and are the 2 seed, I think that's worse than being the 5 seed. Because if you're the 2 seed, you're going to play either the 7 or 10 seed. And if you're the 2 seed, the 5 seed, you're going to be playing the 12 and the 4, which is probably the Group of 5 champion and the Big 12 champion.
Yeah.
And that's cake most years. I mean, that's your Arizonas, your Oklahoma States, your Liberties. I mean, you're going to be basically having 2 glorified buys.
But I think what will happen is with this, the cream will rise to the top. The first few matchups will be tough, but to win the national title next year, you're going to have to go through some good teams no matter what happens, right? So I think matchups are going to matter, who you play and where you're at. But I mean, I'm just excited as hell to see Ohio State could host an SEC team in Columbus next year in the playoffs in December. How cool is that, right? Or like Georgia could host, it's gonna be cool to see games in December that mean something, right? So I'm excited about that to see where it goes.
Back to DeReal's point here, just to accentuate one of his scenarios. You're the number 5 seed. You're the second place team in either the Big Ten or the SEC, and you're the 5 seed. You're playing the 12. So this year you're playing Liberty. So you are playing a team that's completely off the map, is playing a practically different sport than everybody else. Number 1. And then after you win that game, you're playing the 4 seed, who is the lowest seed and worst of the 4 conference champions. And let's interpret that. You are not one of the 4 best teams in the country. You might be the 15th best team in the country. And those are 2 of your 3 playoff games. You win those 2 and you are playing in the national championship game.
Yeah.
Right. I did the math on that this year, and that would have been Liberty in Arizona with all the conference realignments. Like when you see these charts and stuff ESPN has, it's supposed Washington's in the Pac-12, Texas is in the Big 12, and it's like, that's not the way it's going to be, so I don't know why we pretend.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is going to hurt the sport more than anything else. When I say there's going to be massive blowout games, I'm not trolling. Yeah. If Michigan were to play Liberty, they'd probably win by 70, 80 points.
So do you think it's better not to actually win your conference? So like this year, it would have been better for Ohio State not to beat Michigan and win the conference?
I think if you're can guarantee the 5 seed, I honestly would rather take that path than the 2 seed.
Because you can think there's a scenario where like next year, Michigan, they could play at the end of the year, Ohio State, and then play them again in the very next week for the Big Ten title.
Well, we know that the 5 seed this year would have been probably Georgia. Let's say it could have been Ohio State. Regardless, Georgia or Ohio State would have played Liberty, and then they would have played Arizona.
Yeah, that is a very good point from you 2 guys.
Right, and then the 1 seed would have been Michigan because they were the number 1 team. And then who would have they had to play? Like a Missouri-type team?
Yeah.
To make the play, or an Oregon?
Yeah, I think, what was it? Anyway, regardless, a good team, one of those 10-win teams.
Right, and that's significantly harder being the 1 seed and getting to the next round than the 5 seed having to play 2 different games, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that is going to be a situation that if these leagues are as separated as we believe they're going to be, is going to be an interesting seeding to track. The coveted 5 seed.
Yeah, who gets the 5? That's all. Now that's all MVP has me thinking about next year. Got to get that 5 seed.
Yeah, don't win the conference.
Yeah, don't win it.
Be a
Lose to
second
Ohio
place
State on
team.
purpose. Sit your starters. Don't win
Right,
that
Mark. And
conference.
for all the people that believe, ESPN and SEC bias, okay, you put Alabama as the 1 seed, and you put Georgia on that 5 line, okay, and you basically guarantee 2 SEC teams in the Final Four that way.
Yeah, you would think so.
Right, because if you're the 6, you're going to have to be playing the ACC champion most years to get through. And that would have been Florida State this year. Most years it would have been those elite Clemson teams. So that would have been brutal.
Wow. Hey, Mark, I had a quick different topic for you.
Sure.
A second. Do you think at all it was on Ohio State's part to wait till the portal or the transfer is over, then bring in Howard, so Devin Brown and them can't transfer out now?
Yes.
Okay,
I
that was
do.
a little bit shady to do to Devin Brown. I'm just saying. I'm sure he's not happy about that.
Well, they must have been taking some level of, if that was their strategy, then they were playing a bit of risk there, because Will Howard almost, based on reports, signed with USC.
I think Ohio State was cool either way. If they got him, they were happy about it. If not, they had Devin Brown, but they screwed Devin Brown over in the process.
How are they screwing over Devin Brown?
Well,
Then
because
he is going to have another opportunity after spring practice to enter the transfer portal.
Okay, good. Okay, my apologies then. So he can still transfer. Okay,
Yes.
cool. Thank you. My apologies.
Yeah,
I thought
there's
he
going to
couldn't
be another
transfer out.
window after spring practice.
Okay, good. My apologies about that. I thought he couldn't transfer out anymore. I thought he was done out. So I thought they did that to him completely. Where I know you got to stay here, one way or the other. So, but
Yeah,
I think Howard. I mean, how do you feel about Howard? Do you think that is an upgrade from McCord or Devin Brown?
There are 2 reasons why I think he might be an improvement over Kyle McCord. One is that we have to understand that Kyle McCord, if we're going to evaluate Will Howard's season in 2024 against Kyle McCord's season in 2023, well, he's got the huge advantage of playing a lot of football. He's been the starting quarterback for 2 years, and even before that, he was fighting for the starting spot. So he was playing a lot even prior to 2022. And then he turned in 2 full seasons at Kansas State after that. So he's thrown 1,000 passes in college, versus Kyle McCord being evaluated by everyone and Ohio State fans as a pretty inexperienced quarterback. A lot of years a couple of years in the system, but not playing. And then Will Howard's a mobile quarterback. He can threaten a defense. He's not Michael Vick, but he can threaten a defense. So he's got a skill set that Kyle McCord does not have. But do I think that he's, as DeReal said when he got on the phone, he's probably not Justin Fields or CJ Stroud.
And
he's not been that guy yet.
I came on late, but I did hear you say that it doesn't. I mean, he can throw 30 to 40 touchdowns. That's not going to matter. He has a couple of jobs that he has to do. He's got to beat Michigan, and they got to do well in the playoffs.
Yeah, the 30 or 40 touchdowns may lead to that. That's obviously, if he's rolling against Rutgers and Maryland, that's a great sign. You don't want to see him struggle. But it's much like Ryan Day's evaluation. His evaluation is going to come, although there is Oregon on the schedule, and Penn State is not on the schedule, I don't believe, for Ohio State this year. But Oregon is.
Yeah, you guys got a fairly good schedule for this new. I know Michigan plays Oregon, USC, Ohio State.
Yeah, Michigan's got a pretty good
Washington,
run.
and we play Washington, and then Texas out of conference.
Michigan plays after, well, even Fresno State in week 1's not a complete pushover. Then Michigan plays Texas, Arkansas State, USC, Minnesota, Washington. It's a pretty good 3 out of 4 game stretch. Texas, USC, Minnesota, Washington. And let's see, later in the season, it's pretty much Oregon and it's Ohio State.
And this is a good question for MVP and you as well. Like, 'cause, you know, right now it's like you can't lose more than one game and make it to the playoffs, right? Like you can't really lose any, but no more than one. And with a 12-team playoffs, what do you think that realistically is? Like 3 games you could lose and make it, depending. Like
So,
say Michigan loses to Texas, loses to Washington,
yeah.
and so on, right? Like
All
think they
right.
could still make it.
So what we've done here, and probably should do it again because it's so buried in videos at this point, 2 years ago, is run through the playoff era in particular, and even before that. But the playoff era is the easiest one to do because there was a college football playoff committee. So we could see exactly how they ranked teams and take those rankings and apply them to this system to see what your record needs to be. You basically, if you're going to play in the SEC and the Big Ten, 10-2, you're safe. You're in.
Okay.
You go 9-3. I think we're going to get to a place a few years down the road where if things play out the way I anticipate, that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to gain more and more respect because of the results. And that 9-3 team is going to be a factor from year 1, but going to be even more of a factor as they gain more respect. What's going to be interesting to see how they evaluate these teams and how they treat teams that lose conference championship games. Because again, if you go through the last 10 to 15 years of college football, there are a ton of teams that finish 10-3 after they lose a conference championship game that would have made the playoffs before the conference championship game. And after they lose a conference championship game, they drop from, let's say, number 11 in the country to number 16 in the country. So are we going to penalize teams for going to conference championship games?
And I mean, this is a dumb question, but conference championship game, it's like an invite. You don't have to go play in a conference championship game. You don't want to, do you?
Well, of course you do.
Oh, you do? Okay. I don't know if you had to go play in your game or not.
You think schools can just say we're going to forfeit, not go?
No, we're not. We're not going to play it.
And Fox doesn't have a game, or ESPN doesn't have a game?
No, I'm just joking around. I'm just trying to do the Notre Dame thing. Like they don't have a conference, so they don't have to worry about playing in one.
Well,
so
yeah.
But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see because like if Michigan loses to say Texas, Oregon, Washington, but then they beat Ohio State at the end of the year, and Ohio State only has like 1 or 2 no losses. Like, would you put Michigan in a 9-3 Michigan team in that just beat Ohio State? So it's going to be this committee's still going to have something to vote on. They don't got top 4 teams to vote on anymore, but to get those 12 teams right, they still have a little bit of work to do. The seeding, like MVP says, the seeding matters. Clearly.
Yeah.
It does.
Yep.
I'm sure you got to go. I wanted to talk to you about the Michigan-Alabama game, Mark, but maybe I can do that another date. I'm sure you got calls and stuff.
Nobody's calling.
So,
no call.
It's
all you.
I don't. Man, that was just a hell of a game. Like I don't think I've kind of heard people talk about it because Harbaugh went for it on 4th and 2, right? But he did it with 3:19 left and 3 timeouts. Like I heard a lot of people saying they probably would have punted. Would you have punted in that situation, or would you have gone for it?
No, I would have gone for it. Now,
okay. Ryan Day, would he have gone for it, or would he have punted?
I don't know about Ryan Day. I know that I can say with a clear conscience that I was sitting there thinking, go for it. Because it's only 2 yards. It's only 4th and 2. And so it's a short yardage situation. And you also are putting yourself in a position to punt the ball back to Alabama. And you don't know I know there's a lot of confidence in the defense to create an immediate stop, but Alabama could rip off 3-4 consecutive first downs and you may never get the ball back. I don't know what the analytics said, but I thought it was a fairly clear choice.
Decision.
Not
Yeah.
statistically, it wasn't, because you're right. You're in that no man's land. It's almost like being at the 35-yard line, where if there's 6 minutes left, you punt the ball. If there's 90 seconds left, well, of course, you've got to go for it. You're right in that place where you either go for it and it's the ball game right there, or you say, we're going to punt and we still have time, but everything has to go right. We have to stop them. Then we have to get the punt back. And we're going to what we're doing is, if everything goes right for us on defense, we're going to be in exactly the same position about if Michigan calls 3 timeouts and immediately stops the clock, in about 30 seconds of game time or so, we're going to be in exactly the same place. I'd have to go through the math of how many seconds would roll off a play and then they call a timeout, but you have no timeouts left and you're going to be pretty much on the same spot on the field. And there's going to be, let's say, 2:45 on the clock, and all that sounds good, but that's a guarantee that you're going to stop Alabama immediately.
I mean, I was on the edge of my seat, and I was like,
I thought it was the right thing to do.
I thought it was the right call too at that time. All right, but the game's moving so fast. When you're watching it, like I thought about it like later that night. I was like, damn it, that was like, we didn't get that. That was game, because they could just easy kick a field goal and that was game, 2-score game.
Sure.
You weren't. Yeah, it was impressive. And then there was also people don't talk about the tackle. You remember in overtime when Milroe was running towards the end zone? Rod Moore made that solo tackle to stop him from running into that end zone.
He was running toward the end zone.
On that overtime, I think it was 2nd and 10. Milroe ran off 12 yards and he was coming by himself, and Rod Moore came and tackled him at the feet, and that's when he got stopped at the 5. It looked like he had a clear path.
Okay.
Rod Moore,
I don't remember that play.
Yeah, and then I always get all these comments online on Twitter. Twitter's just useless most of the time. But JJ, I love your. I was gonna on Twitter. I was going to loop you in on that dumb stat that Fox Sports did, but then I noticed you were already on it about the 0-2, 2-0 thing.
Somebody sent it to me.
Oh, okay. I was gonna do it, and I was like, oh, someone already did it. Mark's already commented on this dumb stat. But I get a lot of JJ hate, right? And that play he made where Donovan Edwards pitched it back to him, he caught it one-handed, and he was falling backwards and threw it 35 yards to Roman Wilson, because that was a backwards pass. If he doesn't catch that, that defensive player is coming right after that ball, and that's a turnover. He caught it one-handed, spun, fell backwards, and threw it 35 yards.
I missed that as well.
Oh, you didn't see that play? Oh, Mark,
well, I watched every play, but I don't remember him doing that. And
yeah, he got up.
If it was going to be a pleasurable experience for me to watch that game again, I would. But
I'll see. You know what I'll do? I'll clip the highlight and put it to you on Twitter. You watch that one scene, but it was a cool scene because he woke up and he had he got up and he had the sod on his helmet and he couldn't see anything. It was a cool play.
But, I saw his teammates jump up and start pulling grass and sod out of his helmet. I remember that part of it, but I don't remember that he had to make that kind of a recovery on the toss.
It's but that, and maybe it's just I'm a Michigan fan for the last 20 plus years. I just expect things to go wrong. It's funny, after that game, even after they won, I called one of my friends, and he's a Michigan fan too, and all we talked about was what they did wrong, not what they did right. It's like you just point out. Well, maybe you're the same way as an Ohio State fan. You always remember the negative stuff they did, not the positive stuff they did. Not you. Okay.
No.
I was like, we fumbled the kick. We did this. We did that. After we just won the biggest game. And how many years do you think that is? 27 years or 25 years? The biggest game they won?
Yeah. I know. I look at it I've got a completely different viewpoint. First of all, I never expect Ohio State to lose a game. Number two, it was probably a couple hours after the Michigan game, and I was still kind of like shaking my head, like hitting myself upside the head, going, "Did they lose that game?"
The Cotton Bowl, or wait, which game?
No, the Michigan game.
Oh yeah. Well, you dominated for 20 plus years. I mean, you don't know anything else. So, you know.
Well,
you do.
I'm
No, sorry. No,
acquainted with
you
it.
know. You
Well,
do.
yeah.
You do. Yeah, you do.
I
I'm
know
just
what the
saying,
90s were like,
yeah,
and I also now we're at 3 straight years, so that's a long time.
yeah.
That's a lot of games now. That's 3 straight.
And it seems like it's worse on Ohio State because Michigan did beat Alabama. Because like there's some pathetic Ohio State fans. They were wearing shirts at the game that said Ohio State fans that are rooting for Alabama or something.
That is
like that.
pathetic.
Like, they made shirts that said Alabama. It was just like they wore those to the game. Like what?
That is pathetic. If I was going to go to that game, let's say I'm just out in Los Angeles, okay, I get tickets to go to the Rose Bowl. First of all, I'm not representing myself as an Ohio State fan, not because I'm embarrassed or anything like that, or don't want to be heckled. It's just because this game's between Alabama and, well, you know what? Maybe I would. I don't know. But anyway, the game's between Alabama and Michigan. I'm just there to watch a good football game. And yeah, to print up, I always thought that I never even thought that it was credible to print up, let's say, Ohio State shirts that have anything to do with Michigan on them. Like, I never bought a shirt that had any derogatory messages about Michigan or anything like that. I just think, why? Why would I put something on my body that wears something that acknowledges my team's rival? Why would I do that?
Well, Mark, you have more sense than 98% of college football fans.
And the older I get, the more I am just, I'm not neutral, of course. I still love my team and want them to win, but it doesn't impact me like it once did too. So that's part of it.
And hey, I despise the Buckeyes, but I also respect the Buckeyes for what they've done too. You know, like their level of dominance over the Big Ten for 20 plus years is just insane. So there's nothing. Now, I think Ohio State fans, or will they want Ohio State's won 2 championships in the last 52 years or something like that? But
yes,
they walk around like, I don't know. This is a lot of Ohio State fans I've run into. They walk around like they're Alabama or something over the last
why
15
not?
years. And they compete for it, but they have not won those titles. You know, the goal is to win the title, right?
Well, you just threw out. Well, first of all, you would have to talk to each individual to say what are you celebrating? What are you boasting about? Are you boasting about right this second? Are you boasting about the last 10 years? Are you boasting about the last 50 years? What are you boasting about?
Well, because every Ohio State fan I've run into, it just seems like it's from the year 2000 and up. That's all that I hear. It's that. So that's the boast I get. You know, Michigan hasn't done that.
So when because you jumped around from different time frames and you backed it up to 52 years. And so then you said some Ohio State fans walk around like they're Alabama. Well, first of all, I take no pride's not the right word. I take no arrogance in what Ohio State has accomplished. I had nothing to do with it other than I'm a fan. And without fans, none of this exists. So I do credit fans. Some people say you can't go around saying my team did this and my team did that. Why not? If we don't exist, then they don't exist. Then those guys are pumping gas or they're going to class or whatever they're doing. They're not playing football for money and for fame. So
you know what, Mark, you just saved me a bunch of headache. For when I say we, people always say, "Why do you say we?
Yes.
You didn't play." I hear that all the time.
You're right.
That's a good.
We didn't play, but if we don't exist, they don't exist. They don't exist as football players. What they do does not matter. They're playing in a recreational league somewhere.
And before you go off on what you said, I probably should rephrase what I said. Maybe certain Ohio State fans that are just the very few that I hear them say a lot of times, well, we're the kings of college football. We're the royalty of college football. We're this and that. We're this and that.
Well,
and
I've
I'm
never,
like, you haven't. So let me take
Yeah.
that. Let me take
Yeah.
that statement.
I just don't.
Let me take that statement back. what I was gonna say.
I don't use terminology like that. So there's
Yeah.
only 2 instances in which I use terminology like that, and one has to do with spirituality, and the other one
Yeah.
has to do with music. So those are the only people I. So when it comes to sports, yeah, I've never said Ohio State's the king of college football or anything ridiculous like that. But if somebody would ask me, I forget how you phrased it, or taking pride in Ohio State, or do I think that they're the best? Do I think they're the best right now? Well, clearly not. They're not the best. They're in the running. They have competed for the longest period of time for elite status and have been elite for the longest period of time. And I certainly have been known to throw out the statistic that Ohio State has the best winning percentage in college football history. So there's no reason historically that Ohio State should take a back seat to Alabama just because they've won more voted national championships. And they have been the one program that has certainly been the better program while Nick Saban has been the coach. That's not debatable. I would never debate that. Ohio State's either number 2 or 3. I'd say they're number 2 in these 15 years, but they're not Alabama over the last 15 years. Nope, they're not.
And I never understood how national titles work, to be honest. I hear, I see a Michigan banner says 11 national titles, right? But I know we have 1.5 in so many years. So I don't even know. That's more your expertise than mine, right? I only know what I've seen. So I've seen one in 1997. So that's what I saw. And that's a co-national championship,
Well,
But
I don't think you should in any way take a back seat in national championships. I don't believe in that whole people that want to degrade Michigan and say they won a half national championship in 1997. They won all the games. And so they have no control over who else should have been played. Yes, we should have had a game between Nebraska and Michigan, but we didn't. The system wasn't set up in such a way, but neither of those schools need to, or their fan bases need to take a back seat and claim only a half of a national championship.
and the last time we won a title, we played a team out of the state of Washington. So Washington State. Now we're playing Washington. So it's all come full circle. Last time we won a title, we won 3 straight Big Ten championships. That was 95, 96, 97. We've done that again right now. So, I mean, hopefully everything's lining up for Michigan to win this Monday. I would love to see it again. I mean, there's a lot of built up frustration over the last 20 plus years. So hopefully it's a good game. I know you'll probably have other shows to talk about that, and I'll definitely try to call in. Sorry, it's been hectic during the holidays and everything to give you a shout. So,
No worries.
But,
I've got a
it's
list
always-
of your national championships right in front of me now.
How many do you see there?
There's 11.
11? Okay. That's
Yeah.
right. That's why I have a banner. I gotta find it. I had a banner when I was growing up. It was like 11 national titles.
Now,
So,
Now, Biggs, you can appreciate this when I've gotten into it with Michigan fans, and I really want to poke the bear a little bit. I let them know I'd like for them to go look these games up on YouTube so that they can watch them from 1901, 02, 03, 04.
Now-
Well, there's 4 right out of the gate. That's pretty good.
Now, I will say this: another guy you have on the show, I will listen to the show. Uncle Lou says the same thing. Either you pick a certain time period, or you pick all the time periods.
Yes.
Right. You can't be selective of which one you.
Yeah, you
what,
can't
what,
jump
what are we
around.
going? You can't jump around, right? Because I hear a lot of Ohio State fans. Well, if you take away these first 30 years, Ohio State actually leads the overall. I'm like, well, where are we starting to point at? Because you take everything, or you don't. One of the two. So. It's but agree 1902, 1903, 1904, right? But those games were played.
They count.
They count, right? So
They count.
but No, most people don't count them just because what it is. But that's what I love about college football. It's the history of college football, right? So
I'm going to run a series along those lines, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few weeks after we get past the championship game, and we'll see if anyone's interested in my series idea.
Okay, yeah, for real. Okay, that'd be good. I'm interested to see what you bring.
All right, Biggs.
You always bring good content, so don't ever hesitate on content. So I mean,
I
even
appreciate
if
it.
it's not related to my team, I watch it and listen to it because I just like to take all the information I can in. And your stuff is always detailed and picked through like a fine comb.
Well,
So
thank you.
You're the best out there, man. So keep it up. And hey, you're a Buckeye fan, but that's the only thing I can hold against you. So other than that, you're cool with me, man. So you can do whatever. But I hope you have a good rest of your evening. And I hope you have a call-in show on Monday. Either way it goes, I'll give you a call.
Oh, yes.
And hopefully it's a good call. If not, it might be the day after. I do have to work. I hate how they hold these games on Monday.
Yep.
I do work an 8 to 5 job, and
Yep.
so it's like this game's gonna be on till like 11 or something, right? It's like people got to work in the morning, but
11. Oh, it's going to be later than that.
I thought it started at 8, but I saw somewhere it said 6:30. Is it what time is it?
Well, you have to account for these tricky TV networks that want you to tune in at 6:30. No, that's their pregame.
So does it start at 8, right?
You'll be lucky if it starts at 8. I think the game broadcast starts at 8. I bet they kick off at 8:20.
Okay, I won't call you Monday night, but I will call you one of the other.
No, these national championship games last past midnight.
Well, Mark, I haven't been in one forever, so I don't know. So I normally
halftime is going to last forever. We know that they're going to have some ridiculous halftime show.
I don't know why so college football has a lot of things right, but they do a lot of things wrong. Because even a Super Bowl starts out like at 6 most of the time.
Yes.
Like the way the college football. I mean, there's so many other topics we can talk about another time, but college football has a lot of things with their schedule. They need to
well, the issue is that the Super Bowl's on a Sunday, though, so people aren't working generally.
And there's important NFL games this Sunday with the playoffs pending, so they can't have it on a Sunday.
Even if the two worst NFL teams are playing, college football is not going to go up against the NFL.
Yeah, it's it's okay. I'll just one game. I'll be able to. I'll be able to stay up past my bedtime.
They've got it listed for 7:30, so maybe they'll kick at 7:45.
So not, but you're saying there's always longer halftime shows, right? And then
I bet the game if they kick at 7:45, Michigan likes to run the ball. The game could be over about 11:20.
Speaking of that, yes, that's very true. If Michigan do what they want to do, those quarters may go by down pretty quick, right? If Michigan's able to run the ball.
Yes.
And so hopefully this game can not last till midnight. But if Washington has it their way, they're going to be thrown everywhere, and it's going to go all night. So one of the two is going to happen.
Yep.
But, thanks again for taking my call. It's always fun. They should let me hop on with the real MVP. I like the guy. Some of that stuff he was saying was just
sure.
It was 35-0, Mark. Come on now. That's it.
Thanks, Biggs.
That's fine. Have a good one, bud. You take care.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right. We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We've got our buddy David Greenshield stopping by.
Welcome to my personal hell, Mark Rogers. How you doing?
Yes. Ohio State fans relegated to watching the final game of the season and Michigan's quest to win a national championship.
Shout out to the largest fan base out there. There you go. How you guys doing? All my dudes in the chat, Mike G, Moose, the crew. I hear you out there, man. I wanted to come. By the way, I will correct your last caller. Did he say that the team up north won 3 straight Big Ten titles in 95, 96, and 97? Because they did not.
I don't know. I don't remember hearing that.
I thought he had said that they had won 3 straight, because he had said that they won 3 straight Big Ten titles. The last time they won the title, they won 3 straight Big Ten titles, then won the title in 97. I thought that's what he said. If he did say that, just to stipulate, Northwestern won the Big Ten title in 95, and we won the Big Ten title in 1996. Just to clarify that.
Sure. Yes.
Is that
I'm understanding of that.
okay? I just wanted to correct the record. And by the way, all these people that say that Ohio State rooted for Alabama, Team Up North fans, pop in the chat. Out of the 5 national title games that Ohio State played in, how many times did you root for us? No, it's a fair. Yeah, I mean, the door swings both ways. You tell me. Out of the 5 national title games we played in both the BCS era and the playoff era, how many times did you root for us? It's a fair point. The door swings both ways, guys. So you tell me.
So Ohio State has played in 5 national championship games since Michigan's last title game. Yeah.
Right, 02, 06, 07, 14, and 20.
Yeah.
Now, they're 2 and 3, obviously.
Yes.
So, but I would be curious. Go ahead and stipulate, guys. How many times have you rooted for us? But I would dare say that's probably 5 times they rooted against us. But okay, But we're supposed to be all in on going in for the Big Ten and united behind the Big Ten. Now all of a sudden,
I know that I received just a massive, overwhelming array of support and comfort after Ohio State lost to Georgia in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, lots of support, I'm sure. I mean, the thing about it is, and I come back to, and maybe I should be happy that, we got a moral victory this year, Mark, that Ohio State, with its worst quarterback in 15 years, stayed to within 6 points of the greatest college football team there ever was on their field and lost on a last-second interception. Maybe we're at the point where we should just take moral victories here, right, Mark?
I hope it's not come to that, but other fan bases go to that point.
Yeah. Well, I asked some of the Team Up North fans, did we play them better than Alabama did?
The game was on the road.
Yeah. I mean, we did outgain them and have more first downs in the game than they did.
I'm guessing that Michigan had the yardage advantage on Bama, but it was relatively close.
They did. I think it was 280 something to about 350. My dude Ralph Wolf's probably checking that in the chat. If you want to, Ralph, we did outgain you when we played you, and we also had more first downs than you did, 22-18. You can go ahead and look that up. I already have. But we turned the ball over 2 times, lost the turnover battle 2-0, and that's why we lost by 6 points on your field.
Yeah.
So, but hey, it's the greatest team of all time, and for us to stay within 6 points, we should just say, you know what?
If we want to take this argument, if we want to stay on this path, David, we could also go to Joel Klatt's argument that Michigan's second touchdown should not have been scored.
Right. Well, I mean, and McCord did throw essentially a pick 6. There was a controversial touchdown.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, by the way, but I do think in the moment, I thought it was quite bold and interesting that Joel Klatt believes that should not have been a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very close play. I mean, I think if you go look at that, that's close to a very 50-50-ish type play. It wasn't, overwhelming evidence one way or another, which is why I don't think they could have overturned it at the time, to be fair.
And it's one of those rules that had it been overturned, I would have thought, well, my fandom aside, I was, of course, rooting like hell that they would overturn it. But my fandom aside, I would have thought, okay, they technically got it correct. It can be seen that way. But is that really where we're at with determining plays in football?
Yeah. No, I hear you. I mean, and I get the point where they could say that there wasn't a conclusive enough evidence to maybe overturn it. If you want to go down that road and say there wasn't, because usually to overturn what happened on the field, there's got to be, one would say, more overwhelming evidence to go ahead and overturn it. But, I didn't, there might not have been there in that particular situation.
Absolutely.
But I would say this though, just kind of thinking back on it, I did get my prediction right because remember I picked 24-20, but I said that McCord would have to play a clean game for them to win, which he did not. So I was within the realm of possibility there.
I don't recall my score. It was something similar to that.
Right. I do wanted to comment on the situation with Will Howard, and I'll get to it with you. To that point, and by the way, I did say when on one last thing to Team Up North fans, when it was announced on the playoff predictions, I thought that was a pick'em game between you and Bama. You go back and check the tape. I called in and marked, and I said I actually think this game could go either way because I agreed with Dace. This isn't your older brother's Alabama team, you know.
Yeah, there's no question that there's no elite, special, generational kind of back.
Right.
There is not one of those kind of game changers at wide receiver. This offensive line is not a vintage Bama offensive line. You could actually make the argument, and this is an incredible statement to make about how good Alabama's been. You could make an argument that this is the worst Alabama team since 07.
It's up there. I mean, and to be fair, as an Ohio State fan, I don't think we played a great team in 2014. That wasn't the best version. Now, they had a couple difference makers. They had this guy named Derrick Henry at running back. Maybe you've heard of him. They had this wide receiver by the name of Amari Cooper. Maybe you've heard of him. They didn't have any guys like this on this Alabama team. And Blake Sims was not a good quarterback. Now, I think Blake Sims might be slightly better than this guy, than Milroe, if you want to do apples to apples there. I mean, and Blake Sims had a semi-decent year in 2014.
Yeah, he did. He had a better passing year than Jalen Milroe.
It's interesting.
He was not the specimen nor the runner. He was a mobile guy, but he wasn't the Cam Newton-esque type of, like Milroe was starting to get to that range as a runner, be that type of runner like a Cam Newton. Blake Sims wasn't that. He was no physical specimen, but he was mobile, and he had a better passing season than Milroe.
He did. I mean, but he was no great shakes. I mean, that was in the middle of when Saban was winning with kind of mediocre quarterback play. You know, the McElroys, the McCarrons, the Jacob Cokers of the world. You know, kind of like dudes that are now working at ESPN or, have day jobs.
Blake Sims threw for 3,500 yards, 28 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, that's a better year than Milroe had this year.
Yeah.
Now, he had the benefit of having the best receiver in college football to throw to that year because I think Cooper won the Biletnikoff.
Did he? Yeah.
I think he was the best receiver in 14. Amari Cooper was. A great year that year. So what I was going to say, though, and by the way, early feel on the title game, I would also favor the team up north to win that game. I just want to say that, too. I think Washington's defense is awful, and I think they can take advantage of that secondary, and they should be able to run the ball on them. However, this is the best offense they'll have played. Conversely, obviously, the best defense that Washington has played. Just to say I'm being fair here and calling balls and strikes, I do feel that way. Although I will say this about Washington, that offensive line can pass protect. And that's one thing that could bode very well in big time in that game. If they can hold up in pass pro, I think Penix, even though that's as good a secondary as there is in the country, those three wide receivers in Penix could still do some business. But I think if the team up north holds them under 30, unless Penix has like a Deshaun Watson kind of night, like against, Watson had against 2016 Alabama, that's really the only path I could see to Washington winning that game. Otherwise, I would favor the team up north to win by right around 10. My early view.
So in addition to the pass rush that should be more effective against Penix than Texas, those two cornerbacks, and even beyond them, the rest of the guys in the secondary, Josh Wallace, etc., are more capable in coverage than Texas. But those two top guys, now we know that no cornerbacks can hang with elite receivers for a period of time. But I do have faith in those two corners being able to do that more often, much more often than any other cornerbacks that they've faced this year.
Right.
And that's going to help the pass rush.
Right. Yeah. Well, but I will say Washington has 3 good receivers in McMillan, Polk,
Sure.
and Roma Doomsday. And I'll say this as an Ohio State fan, a case could be made that Roma Doomsday might have deserved the Bolitnikoff over Marvin this year. I think actually you could have made a case for Roma Doomsday or Neighbors this year to have won the Bolitnikoff over Marvin. I actually think this might have been a makeup award for Marvin not winning it last year over Hyde. I think I'd already mentioned that to you.
Oh, I think it was. Yeah.
So I would say that. But like I said, that's my early feel. I do think that they will win, but you know, if Penix has a special night, I think that's the path for Washington to be able to pull off the upset. What's that, 4.5 mark right now?
Yes.
4.5. I wonder if that ticks up or ticks down. Be interested to see. Gut feeling on that one?
Yeah, I don't have a gut feeling because I think it's about right where, not necessarily where I would put it, but where it's going to land. Yeah, I've got no feel for that.
Okay. Well, let me get to the team that I care about, Mark, and rather than the team that I despise. Enough talk of them. In any case, to the Buckeyes, I do think that Howard is. I'm kind of, I think, with you, Mark. I think if Howard is an upgrade over McCord, it's a slight upgrade. I don't think it's a big upgrade. I've watched some of his tape, and I know, and I'm going to make a couple of points here. He can make plays outside of the pocket to where I think McCord was more or less a statue. He's not super mobile. You're absolutely right. But I think he can make plays outside the structure to where he can get outside the pocket and make a throw on the run, where I never really saw that from McCord this year. And I think he can be a little bit more accurate on intermediate throws too. So I think from a mobility standpoint and being able to do that, I think that there's an upgrade there. Now, I would stipulate he will have better receivers to throw the ball to, obviously. But I will also stipulate he's going to be playing against better defenses in our conference than he was playing with in the Big 12. So you have to take that into consideration too. I do think that Brown and him have to complete. This is like poor man's Haskins and Burrow circa 2018, where you basically see these two, compete for the job, and then whoever doesn't win it might probably heads out the door. Is that kind of like an early read on it as far as what you're seeing, Mark?
Yes, especially if that is Devin Brown, who gets beat out by Lincoln Keenholz. So I think the clock is ticking more on Devin Brown than it is on Keenholz, obviously, with another year in the program.
Right. I do. I mean, I agree with Day's larger point that Keenholz was kind of set up for failure, in that game. I think a few things happened. I don't think he was prepped well enough. That goes to the coaching. I think the changes they made on the offensive line that allowed the offensive line to become a train wreck in that game is on the coaching. That's why I posted in the chat the 2 things that I posted on Buckeye Talk to Hellwagon, which is it time for a new offensive line coach, and is it time for Day to bring in an OC? In many ways, Urban Meyer faced these same challenges. I already mentioned this after the debacle against Deshaun Watson and Clemson, when they got shut out 31-0. And what did he do? He went out and hired 2 guys. Do you know who those 2 guys were, Mark?
Well, he hired Ryan Day.
Yep.
And he hired... That's not when he hired Schiano, is it?
No, another offensive guy, Mark.
Hartline, was it?
Who's not there anymore, by the way.
Oh, that was no. Tom Herman was already there, obviously. Not Beck.
No, that's who
coming up with.
Kevin Wilson, Mark.
Kevin Wilson. Okay.
Yeah, they brought in Day and he brought in Wilson.
That was the end of Wilson's run at Indiana?
Well, yeah. Well, remember Wilson Wilson was gone, I think, after 16 because he had that bad incident with them.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think Tom Allen took over in 17, if I'm not mistaken.
All right. I thought that was a little early. Okay.
Yeah, because and by the way, I think the loss of Wilson, and a lot of people have talked about this. I don't know how much you guys have gotten into this, Mark. It is probably hurt Day a little bit to have a guy that's actually been a coach before, called plays before, because that's the thought that's out there right now, Mark. I don't know what your thoughts about it are about the head coach calling the plays.
Yeah, you're right about Tom Allen. His first year at Indiana was 17. Okay.
Yeah,
Head coach calling the plays. I think that it's typically done on the offensive side, of course. Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day. It's been done successfully. I'm not a big fan of it because I think that the more that you can have people focus on one thing and do it to the nth degree, that there's just so much going on, especially on game day, that the head coach is there to manage the entire game, not be locked into a playbook and be focused on that and losing sight of the grand scheme of the game. So it's worked, but I don't think it's ideal. And I would rather have there be a separate play caller.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing that Urban had mentioned that when he took over the job, that's a huge undertaking to run the program and then call the plays on top of that. I mean, there's very few coaches that have done it. They said the last coach to win a national title and do it was actually Jimbo with the 13 Florida State team. And you look at now Sark got within one pass, and he's doing it at Texas.
Yeah.
You know,
And it has to be getting more difficult as things are becoming more complicated with having to recruit the transfer portal,
Yep,
work with NIL
that's
initiatives,
right.
and also retain your own players.
That's right. Yeah, but think about it, Mark. All the guys like Kirby's of the world is a defensive guy. He has a
Yeah.
defensive coordinator. I mean, you can go to either side of the ball. If you come from that side of the ball, even if that's your background, you still have a guy to do it. DeBoer is an offensive guy. He's got this Grubb guy that's calling the plays there that they paid a ton of dough to calling plays. By the way, good matchup Monday night. Grubb versus Minter is going to be an interesting chess match in that game. But yeah, I mean, you have to have that, and I think that's the crossroads that he's obviously at now. That, and does he keep Fry as offensive line coach? It seems to be the obvious changes that I think most folks are talking about. That's why I put it on the chat during Buckeye Talk. My thing is I just don't know that the OC that he would bring in. I mean, obviously to me, it's kind of like how Urban found his Tom Herman. He kind of has to find that, I believe. Although there's a thought that he might not give up the play calling, which I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the best route.
Well, maybe he was caught in a situation where he recognizes that this is too much for him, but he's got a rising young star that they want to retain. Obviously, they threw him the OC title to keep him interested and
Yeah.
engaged and all of that. But to throw him the reins of play calling, he probably wasn't. Day was not comfortable with that. And so then for him to go outside and bring in a play caller, what does that tell Brian Hartline?
Right. Well, I mean, the bottom line is you've got to get a guy that's done it before. You just have to get a guy that's done it before, that's called the plays before. That's what I think. And, obviously he's got to find somebody that's of like mind, on passing concepts and the design of the offense and all of that.
Yep.
So, I mean, I get that. I mean, by the way, you have an early feel on Howard, Mark? What do you have you watched much tape? I did watch about 3 or 4 Kansas State games this year.
I watched more Will Howard in 2022 than I did this past season. And I think he has 2 advantages over Kyle McCord that are pretty obvious. One is that he's mobile.
Mhm.
He's a willing runner. He's capable of running. The defense has to somewhat respect that. He's not dynamic. He's not super elusive, but he can tuck the ball and run and gain yardage. And that also serves him well in the pocket in terms of escapability. number two is that we are going to be evaluating Will Howard after throwing 800 to 1,000 passes in college football as a 3-year starter. We're going to be making that judgment comparison versus Kyle McCord with no experience. So he better be better. He should be better. He should be making better decisions.
Well, I mean, I told you my obvious drawbacks of McCord. It was three things. It was consistency and a lack thereof, because you go back to like the team up north game's perfect example. He always got off to bad starts. Go back and look at that first quarter, was awful.
Mm-hmm.
He essentially throws a pick six. He should have had a second interception that Stover had to break up on the drive that made it 7-3. He missed a few open receivers. Now, to be fair, he did play well in the second, third, and into the fourth quarter. He made some good throws. And the last pick wasn't on him. The ball, he was hit, and that was the interception. So, I mean, I get that. However, it was just always like the first half against Maryland was horrible. The first half against Rutgers was horrible. The first half against Wisconsin was horrible. That's why I was saying about not seeing enough growth.
Yeah.
And, his interception total was low, but there were games where he had dropped interceptions, i.e. Notre Dame, which would have ended it. He had a dropped interception against Minnesota. I know he actually, as I just mentioned, he had one in the first quarter against the team up north that should have been dropped. And then the second component that I would say, and this is kind of along the lines of the consistency, is I say he always had that, what the hell are you doing throw, where you stare down the receiver, threw back across his body into coverage, or, did what quarterbacks do that leads to interceptions. And on top of that, the third factor is what you've talked about, mobility. Those were the three things that I had major problems with in watching him play over the course of a season.
Well, we would have to go back and look at Will Howard's tape from this year. I saw, I don't know how many Kansas State games, not much of anything. It's not like I sat down from beginning to end and watched Kansas State play any games this year that I can recall, but I saw bits and pieces. And again, I saw more of him the year before. He threw 10 interceptions. We'd have to go back and see the nature of those 10 interceptions, but he threw 10, so he threw more than McCord did.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, I think the touchdowns, was it slightly more for Howard?
He was 24-10 on TDs and picks.
I thought he had 27, if I wasn't mistaken. Maybe that was the year before. I'm not sure on that one.
I believe last year he was actually 15-4 TDs and picks.
Oh, in 22?
Because he was not the starter at the beginning of the season. Adrian Martinez was.
Oh, that's right. The former Nebraska transfer.
Yes. 24-10 this year, 15-4 last year. So Kyle McCord had a better touchdown to interception ratio.
Right. I mean,
and a better completion percentage.
McCord had 6 interceptions. But as I said, he probably had about 5 or 6 dropped interceptions this year, as far as when I watch McCord play too, Mark. So, I mean, you could also look at it because they do keep a stat called turnover-worthy plays.
Sure.
And, I do wonder how many of those McCord had this year compared to Howard. If somebody's got it, wants to put it in the chat, feel free. But, there was certain instances where McCord was very lucky to only have 6 this year, in my view.
Well, I got to think that unless he's extremely lucky, that most quarterbacks had 3 or 4 drops.
Yeah. Not to mention, I could say the intentional groundings that McCord would induce, and on top of that, there were some instances where he had a couple of fumbles too. There were some other issues there that we can dive into that weren't exactly glistening about his resume. And it's interesting how he ends up at Syracuse and not necessarily,
Well, that's either an indication of his lack of skill set, or that's that plus him wanting to guarantee himself a starting position.
That's true. I mean, he's an East Coast guy. Maybe there's also that connection. They got the new coach up there in Fran Brown, right, Mark?
Yep.
So, yeah, I think every Ohio State fan has to see, because, but you had to make this move if you're Ryan Day, because you just didn't know what you have in Devin Brown. because of basically he's working on his third injury after that, after the bowl game.
No, I get that. Are they going to be doing the same thing next year? Are they just going to continue in this cycle?
Well, I think the argument they would say is because Nolan's a 5-star that's coming in, Mark, is this maybe a bridge quarterback?
Sure. I know that's the argument.
You probably heard that term in
Sure.
the NFL, is you have like that veteran quarterback that you bring in as a bridge before you start your younger quarterback in the upcoming years. Because obviously you don't want to throw a freshman quarterback in right away, even if he is a 5-star.
I just don't want to see this become a cycle.
No, I agree. I mean, it's interesting. People talked about the McCarthy thing, Mark, versus McCord, and I know that's obviously an ongoing debate. To me, Ohio State's quarterback was on their roster 2 years ago and playing on Monday night.
2 years ago. 2 years ago?
In 2021, he was on the roster.
And he played. Oh, J.J. McCarthy.
No, on Ohio State's roster 2 years ago.
Oh, Quinn Ewers.
That's right.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, that was supposed to be the quarterback that was taking over for Stroud. And there ain't no difference. And believe you me, there's a major difference between. I'll take Quinn Ewers over Kyle McCord any day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Oh, sure. Yes.
That ain't even close.
No, it's not.
So, I mean,
if Quinn Ewers is the quarterback, maybe Ohio State's playing tonight. Or
I wonder if our Team Up North fans would acknowledge that Quinn Ewers is a lot better than Kyle McCord. They're trying to talk Ohio State fans out to saying that McCord's not that bad, but Quinn Ewers is, different level than Kyle McCord. Let's just be clear on that one.
He is. Although he wasn't projected to be. They were both 5-stars.
No, yours was the first or second rated quarterback in his class, Mark.
I thought Ewers was 1 and McCord was like 5.
Okay, well, I mean, yours was still higher rated, but
sure. But I'm just saying they were both 5-stars.
True. Yeah, I still wonder, and I think most Ohio State fans wonder about the package deal of McCord and Marvin, and how much Marvin just made McCord, both high school and college to a certain extent.
Sure. Well, that's in the rearview mirror.
No, it is. You got to keep moving, and that's where I think this spring game is going to be interesting and tell a lot. Like I said, this is is that a good way to put it? Poor man's Haskins-Burrow.
It is a poor man's version.
Yeah, because that was the competition they had in 2018.
Yep.
All right, Mark. Well, it's a pleasure to talk college football, even at this most distressing time for me. But you keep up the good work, my friend, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, David. I'm looking at Amari Cooper's statistics from that year.
Yeah.
They're pretty astounding. I guess I had forgotten this. 124 catches.
Yeah.
1,727 yards and 16 touchdowns.
By the way, take a look at the disparity that year with Alabama between their first and second receiver. I think their second receiver caught like 20-some passes or 30 passes or something.
Well, DeAndre White, 40.
Oh, got 40? Okay. Still quite a chasm of difference.
TJ Yeldon and Derrick Henry just a couple yards shy, each of them, of 1,000 yards.
Slightly better than the Bama offensive weapons of 2023, I would say, Mark.
Yes.
Slightly better. Just
Kenyon
slightly.
Drake was on that team.
Yeah.
OJ Howard was on that team.
Yeah, NFL tight end. Good player.
Yeah. They were loaded.
All
right, sir.
Take care, Mark.
Thanks.
We'll
Appreciate it. All right. Final call of the night, and we've been waiting. He has been waiting patiently. And so we will take our next call here at the Voice of College Football. We've got Olivier here.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
I am doing just fine. How are you?
I'm okay.
What is going on tonight?
Would you call Tennessee a championship football program?
No, they are not.
Would you call Washington a championship football program?
They have a championship team this year, but they have not proven it year after year after year.
Is that a no?
It's a no.
Would you call Florida State a championship football program?
No.
Oklahoma?
No. Right now, no.
Notre Dame?
No.
The Tigers? LSU?
No.
Clemson?
No.
Okay, so I see where you're going with this.
Are you talking about the national championship?
Would Mark Rogers call Tennessee a championship football program in general?
No.
Would you say Tennessee?
Historically?
What would you say?
They are not a championship program and have not been for 2 decades. No.
Washington?
No.
Florida State?
Historically, yes. Under Bobby Bowden and Jimbo Fisher, yes. That's a different question.
The Sooners?
Oh, yes. Historically, yes.
But no for Tennessee and no for Washington.
There are tiers. There are levels.
That's what I'm trying to sort out. Notre Dame?
Yes. All time?
The last one was in 88. I know I don't have to remind you of that, but the last one was in 88.
Yes.
So they're a championship football program or not?
Not now. No.
Okay. May I keep going?
Sure.
LSU?
Not right this second, but yes, their recent history, they are a championship program. Yes.
Clemson?
Yes. I thought you were talking about this right now, this team. Yes, Dabo Swinney, this Clemson program is a championship program that is built. Yes.
Ohio State?
Yes.
Michigan?
Yes.
The last one was okay. The Florida Gators?
No.
Okay. Before I make my point here.
Okay.
Since 1980, Georgia?
Yes.
Since 1980, there's been 2 teams that have won the most national championships. And that is the University of Miami and the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Okay.
So when my friends who are not University of Miami fans,
yes,
and justifiably so, get sick of us and hearing our mouths boast since 1980,
okay,
perhaps even since 1970, there's been 2 programs who have the most national champions, and that's the Alabama Crimson Tide, and that's the University of Miami football program.
Yes.
Okay. Now, to my point with Ohio State, because I've always been suspect in the back of my head with Ohio State, maybe because of what they did to us in 2002 or what happened with the whole referee situation in 2002. Ohio State has won 3 national championships since 1970?
Yes.
Okay. So if they're a championship football program, according to Mark Rogers, then Florida is a championship football program as well. Because you said no to Florida, 96, 06, 08, Ohio State, 02, 4,
Okay, you ready for me to respond?
Certainly so.
Okay. If you want to Google national championships and just make a list, That's easily done. If you want to bring a brain and context and perspective to it and insight, that's why you're asking me. Those are two different things.
Okay. Well, right. I agree.
And there's a lot of
Well, I need to
dynamics
bring that to-
involved.
But
in
I think it's
everything
fair to
you're
bring that
doing.
to your attention as well, though.
And there's a lot of you don't have to bring it to my attention. I know who's won every national championship. So, so I appreciate you bringing that. Yes, 1996, 2006, 2008, Florida Gators. Yes. There's all sorts of context we can give to all of this. One would be, and that's why I was back and forth early in this process, because I didn't know what you were asking exactly. Are you talking about right this second, or all time going back to the 1880s, or whether you had some kind of framework, some kind of time framework? You picked, I'm guessing because you're a Miami fan, you picked 1980 conveniently.
Conveniently. What? Well, then my next question is, when does modern football start?
Okay. I believe that there's really only two ways to answer that question. One is that is individual. That is an individual preference for each one of us. I bet if you ask the average college football fan about what they care about, it's going to be very closely tied to how long that they have individually been a fan. If they're 75 years old, they're going to have a lot longer stretch of time that they care about and find relevant than a 10-year-old. Okay, so there's that part of it. But looking at it more objectively, there's been only one change in college football that I think we can decidedly separate two eras of football, or the past from the recent history. And that would be desegregation. Because people that throw out these arbitrary years, 19, and I'm not picking on you in any such way. I know that you were just doing this to try to distinguish more of a recent history. You weren't doing it for any particular reason, but a lot of the times people come up with these lists and I have had multiple discussions with people that just throw out arbitrary years, 1980, 2000, 1970, and just like something magically changed that year. Well, there's no difference between the way college football was played in 1979 and the way it was played in 1980. One thing that did drastically change, but there wasn't a year in which it changed, it was a gradual change, was desegregation and allowing Black athletes to participate in college football, because in some realms of this nation, they were playing back in the 1940s.
I think that's one aspect, but I think that may be one aspect.
60s.
I would say the other aspect is when they started throwing the football and not running it every down, and offenses became more dynamic.
Okay, well then you're talking about if you're talking about just when the rule was changed to be able to throw a football, you're going back to the 1920s.
No, I'm talking about when offenses started gearing, I'm not going to say towards more passing the ball, but where passing became the norm.
Okay, when was that?
A guess? The 70s? The 60s? The earliest?
Really?
We're throwing the football in the 50s.
You're getting into a complex answer.
Because the way I understand football was they used to just run it every down, right?
You're right. The passing,
and then they started. Then somebody figured out along the way, hey, we can, if we start throwing the football around, we can.
Okay, I'm going to give you an example of why this is a lot more complicated. But I get your point. But why the style of play? Why does that matter?
Just as a part of the aspect of determining when modern day football started. Because I think if we were to use another sport as a reference as well, in NBA, it's the 80s, right?
Why?
I can't tell you why, but when
Yeah.
Jordan,
Why?
I think that isn't that commonly understood to be when the NBA became the modern day game? Oh, because the 3-pointer?
You're an extremely intelligent individual. I'm not saying that in a condescending way. I truly mean that because we've had enough conversations. But don't get suckered into groupthink because we get on social media, and just because some people have determined that 1980s NBA basketball, something magical happened, that all of a
I
sudden
feel like
they like Larry Bird and Magic Johnson.
right,
In popularity, it
Right.
exploded.
right. I feel like I know
happened in
enough
the
about
NBA.
sports, yeah, to say that pretty confidently that
Yeah,
the 80s I think is considered. So I just took that thought and I applied it to football.
yeah. When I was 10 years old, you couldn't watch the NBA finals live. You had to stay up and watch a rerun after the local news. It
Right,
wasn't popular enough to what. That doesn't mean that the play was any different.
right.
Okay, let me give you an example. Here's a great example of what I'm talking about with the passing game. Check this out. In 2009, in the national championship game, Greg McElroy, the Alabama quarterback, in 2009, threw 11 passes. Okay. He completed like 4. So their passing game was completely non existent. He threw for
Like
like
the Ravens,
55 yards. And they
like
won
that
the national
Ravens team,
title. I'm sorry, what?
like the Trent Dilfer Ravens team.
Well, not quite. It
Not
was
quite, because they were doing that all year, but Alabama wasn't doing that all year. I don't think.
Trent Dilfer didn't throw 11 passes in the Super Bowl. I think he threw 23. But
That
anyway,
would have been 5. That would have been 5 too many if he did.
so my point is, listen to this. This is in 2009 that a national championship quarterback's throwing the ball 11 times. But in 1980, Jim McMahon of BYU threw 47 touchdowns that year. He threw for almost 5,000 yards in 1980.
Right.
That
So
was
he was
30
the
years
exception
prior.
and not the norm.
Yes, you're right. That was the exception.
And I think college football is so dynamic as well. Thinking of Nebraska, the service member type football, the way service schools play football, the way Nebraska used to play football, and Georgia Tech. And then you have the West Coast offense, right? It seemed like every region had their style of play.
Yes.
So that's probably another aspect to take into consideration.
Absolutely.
So you said no to Tennessee, you said no to Washington, but you say yes to Michigan, even though Michigan's last was 97, and just as a reference, and Tennessee's was 98 and Washington was 91, but no to Tennessee, no to Washington, yes to Michigan. See, I'm not ready to call Michigan. I mean, my point in calling is to say this as well. If Michigan wins tomorrow or the 8th, I'm warming up to calling Michigan a championship football program. I'm warming up to it. Now, mind you, this is coming from a person who's a Miami fan and who, alongside with the Rolling Tide, Alabama, have the most national championships since 1980. So I think I have, something to stand on here.
You have something to stand on, but by every year that goes by, what you're standing on is crumbling. Miami's done nothing since 2001.
Are you going to answer my question?
2002.
Are you going to answer my question? No to Tennessee, no to Washington, but yes to Michigan?
Michigan's playing in the national championship game.
Why? Because what they did last year?
No,
And
they are
because now-
playing in the national championship game in a couple nights.
Okay. And I've always been suspect.
They play in arguably the best conference in America, and they've won it 3 years in a row and advanced to the playoffs, and they're playing in the national championship game tonight, and they just defeated the greatest coach in history.
After what Rutgers showed what that football program Rutgers showed in the bowl game, hey, now I get the Big Ten. Because if Rutgers plays like that, and they're at the bottom of that tier there in the Big Ten, that's a good conference right there. Seriously. Okay. I'll talk to you later.
Well, I appreciate the call. You always bring interesting topics to the table that make me think.
Okay. Bye, Mark.
Have a good one, man.
You too.
All right. Good stuff there. Really good stuff. Took me a few minutes to get a handle on. Are we talking about right now? Are we talking about all time? All right. We've got some super chats that I apologize that I'm just getting to now. So I apologize for that. We've got Dustin. Thank you so much for the contribution. Hopefully you're still with us. Ryan Day has turned one of the toughest programs into a bunch of daisy pickers. I wonder if they grow the grass long outside of Ohio Stadium, possibly maybe the practice fields. I think they allow those to grow a little bit longer because they like to recruit daisy pickers. And I think they can save a few dollars by mowing the lawn less frequently there at the practice fields and outside of Ohio Stadium. So they get some daisy pickers. All right. And he can't figure out why the players aren't getting the job done. Well, they're collectively not getting the job done. And Dustin, I would say that the longer the job is not getting done, the more that accountability rests on, of course, Ryan Day, because it is his program. It's his selection of assistant coaches, and the players come and go. So the less it's about the players, if you're making that overall evaluation. All right. And we've got Dustin with this one. Thank you so much for this, Dustin. 2 eternal truths. Number 1, Michigan cheats. I don't know if that's an eternal truth. Let's be a little bit more accurate about this. Connor Stallions cheated. That's confirmed. Can't be debated. There is a linebackers coach whose name escapes me right now. Linebackers, Partridge, right? Partridge, who came back to the program. Partridge, who had knowledge or tried to cover something up. I don't want to speak too much about it because I'm forgetting exactly what the connection was. And he was dismissed because of knowledge of. Okay, so those are the cheaters. Now, what we don't know is if the cheating extended past that, Harbaugh had knowledge of. I would like to believe that Jim Harbaugh is completely disconnected from the wrongdoing. He still should have had better program control, should have known where this information was coming from. But hey, there are people in charge of all sorts of companies and departments within companies. Nobody's perfect. And I'm not talking about from a character standpoint, a moral standpoint. I'm talking about from the standpoint of being able to track things. You know, there are certain things that I have set up in my life to keep track of. Do I screw those things up at times? Yes. All right. Number 2, Ryan Day is in over his head. Is he? Accomplishing what the expectation is and being over your head could be 2 entirely different things. There's only one team each season that wins the national championship. It's the expectation at Ohio State that they win the national championship. Ryan Day has not been able to do that. However, looking at that 2019 team, and I understand that was his first team, and that was an Urban Meyer created team roster. But man, that was a really good team in 2019. They went to a national championship game in 2020. We know what happened and how close they were in 2022. So let's see if I can think of here's a good example. There might be more accurate and probably more recent examples that I could give. Was Bud Grant a capable NFL head coach? Was Marv Levy? There's one for you. Was Marv Levy and Bud Grant, were they in over their heads? Were they in over their heads? Marv Levy and Bud Grant, 2 NFL Hall of Fame coaches. Were they in over their heads? I'll check the chat. Were Marv Levy and Bud Grant in over their heads? Well, those 2 guys were 0-8 in Super Bowls. 0-8. I really don't know if there's anyone out there that would say that has a half functioning brain that would say that Marv Levy and Bud Grant did not know what they were doing and were in over their heads. Josephine, thank you so much for joining the chat. Don't know how often you've been involved here at the Voice of College Football, but we appreciate you being here. And Josephine makes a good point about Bud Grant having the misfortune of running up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, that would account for 1 Super Bowl out of 4. That would be 1 out of 4. So and then we've got Will, who is stating here, recruiting rankings matter, but if the player is not coached well, then their talent will be wasted. Alabama's offensive line and wide receivers. The offensive line has to be coached well as a unit. That's a different deal. If we're talking about individual wide receivers, Tom Luganbill, we had a really good conversation. We need to have Tom Luganbill back this offseason because we went on for about 50 minutes with Tom Luganbill, and it was just great insight from him. We had a great conversation. And he said something that I have long since believed, or before that believed, but he brought it up, and I thought, okay, well, I've always figured that. He said for a 5-star, he said, if you are a 5-star, there's only 35 of those guys a year. Think about that. There are 130 FBS schools that sign 25 high school players. So we are talking about, what are we talking about? Let's do the math. We are talking about 3,000 players. And then if we want to size that down to the Power 5, we're talking about 1,500 players signed out of high school. 1,500. 35 of them are 5-stars. 35. That means they are can't miss prospects. And maybe the quarterback position's a bit different than the other positions because of what they have to process upstairs. And maybe that particular player in the high school level didn't have to process much and was just so overwhelmingly talented that they could get by throwing 50-yard bombs to wide open receivers. So take the quarterback position out of it to a certain extent, that the rest of these guys are just freak athletes. And so Tom Luganbill said, not that there can't be an exception out there somewhere, but basically if a 5-star does not, outside of injury, if they get injured, and if we went through every 5-star, we would see that a few of them didn't make it. They became busts, not because they didn't play well, but because they got injured and didn't recover. that out of the other guys, that if they didn't succeed, it was because they had something wrong in their lives. They did not perform because they had emotional, mental issues, maturity issues. They run amok of the law. They don't follow rules. They're not coachable. Not because they were evaluated as a 5-star and then they showed up on campus and they couldn't play. No. So that's what I will say to that. So we are in the midst of signing off. Jeffrey has called. We'll give him a minute. Jeffrey, you snuck in under the wire here, but we are ready to say goodnight. But appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you taking my call. I'll be quick for sure because I saw that you've been live for a while. I thought I was too late, but I just somehow was able to get in. But yeah, I was just one of your thoughts real quick on Will Howard. I know you've talked about it for 2.5 hours, probably. You know, it's been basically the main focus because I'm sure no one really talked about Judkins. But I mean, like, to me, this is my opinion on it. I feel like Will Howard's not that big an upgrade from Kyle McCord. I think he is an upgrade. I just don't think it's substantial enough to make Ohio State fans happy. A lot of them, because of how demanding that they are, they want their quarterbacks to be great. And McCord wasn't enough for them, even though they won 11-1. But what do you think? Do you think he's a substantial upgrade over McCord, or not too much of an upgrade?
Well, I think the first thing that we've got to consider is that we're going to be evaluating Will Howard after throwing 800 passes in college football. So for the Ohio State fan that is going to say, we know what Kyle McCord did last year. We know nothing about Will Howard. We're not watching Kansas State football. So when he shows up week 1 against Akron, we're going to start watching him and see how he does compared to Kyle McCord. They're going to be comparing Will Howard after 800 passes and 3 starting seasons at Kansas State, or really 2 full starting seasons basically at Kansas State, versus Kyle McCord being completely inexperienced. So that's going to be an unfair comparison. So Will Howard better be better. He should be better. So that's number one. Number two is that he's not a statue. So he has elusiveness, not really elusiveness. He's mobile. He's 6'5". He can run. He can escape. So they're going to provide, and Ryan Day better, not that I should be pointing at him, telling him, you better let him run. Not that he's got to be running around like a fool, but this is one skill set that he has that Kyle McCord doesn't have. So you better take advantage of it to a certain extent. Now, he doesn't need to be running around when it's 48-3 against, sorry, I won't bring up Indiana, against Northwestern.
Hey, maybe with Signetti, maybe the defense, can get after him a little bit.
He doesn't need to do that. But I tend to agree with you that it's not like, so Cam Ward is largely believed to have been the best guy on the market. And obviously he has now made a different decision. But most people have ranked Will Howard to be the second best quarterback. I don't think there's a big separation between Will Howard and KJ Jefferson. If anything, statistically, KJ Jefferson's a better quarterback. Statistically, he had back-to-back seasons in the SEC, 21 touchdowns, 4 picks, and 24 touchdowns, 5 picks, and was a 68-69% completion percentage. And you talk about a mobile quarterback. He runs like a tank. He runs over safeties. He's a real athlete. So I don't know what Ryan Day didn't like about KJ Jefferson, but
it was probably more just perception, because at this point, like Ohio State, their fans, they want perceptionally success. They want perceived success. And with KJ Jefferson having, the poor season that he just had at Arkansas.
Yeah.
And if you look at the transfer board, because it's all about rankings and ratings, and Jefferson's down there the 18th best quarterback in the portal, which I disagree with.
18th?
He's 18th on 247 Sports of all the quarterbacks that transferred. He's 18th. I could be wrong. I don't know if that's an exact number, but he's not in the top 10. I'm pretty sure about that.
Okay.
He's pretty low. So I think Ohio State fans would have panicked with Jefferson based off of that because they said that he's not good because he's not one of the top available quarterbacks or whatever. Whereas Will Howard, like you said, is a lot higher.
Yeah, so let's see if I can find this. Walter Nolan is number 1 overall. The quarterbacks.
Trying to look.
So is this including, it can't be including the guys that have already been taken because they've got everyone here. So this is what I'm looking at on 247 Sports.
Mm-hmm.
Aiden Childs, number 1.
Mm-hmm. Which is crazy. He's talented, but
that kind of doesn't make sense, but I'm not going to argue with 247. This must be just a pure talent evaluation because he's obviously not proven anything. Dante Moore's number 2. And you talk about somebody that hasn't proven anything. And when he was given time to play this year, he was a bit of a train wreck. Malik Murphy's 3. I'm a big believer in him. Duke, Manny Diaz. That was a great pickup. Malachi Nelson at 4. Caden Salter, who's still available at 5. And I got to think Miami's going to go hard after him.
They need somebody.
Auburn. Auburn and Miami, I would think, are the 2 big candidates. Will Howard 6. Riley Leonard 7. Brock Vandegrift's 8. Daquin Finn is 9. And Dylan Gabriel's 10. So there's your list. Will Rogers, I was kind of surprised. And those and this is not a knock on Will Rogers. He is one of the most prolific quarterbacks in the history of college football. If you look at his statistics, obviously he played in the Mike Leach system, so that did not hurt. But Washington fans are going to have to get used to. They're not going to see these like 60-yard rockets next season out of Will Rogers. No, it's going to be ding, dunk, ding.
I mean,
ding,
they're thinking of air raid, but it's like he throws 5-yard passes. It's not the 65-yard bombs down the field. It's not the same air raid at all. But yeah, KJ Jefferson on that list was 22nd. So I was higher on what I said than what he's on the list. He's 22nd below Brendan Sorsby, according to 247. Below Brendan Sorsby. That's where they put KJ Jefferson. That's unbelievable. I just don't think that he's the 22nd best quarterback transfer.
He threw, again, 21 TDs and 4 picks and 24 TDs and 5 picks in 2 consecutive years at Arkansas. And I don't have it in front of me. I've got those numbers locked. But he had like 10 or 12 rushing touchdowns on top of that. He accounted for like 35, 36 touchdowns, and he didn't throw a lot of picks. And he had a great completion percentage. Wow. Yeah, they've got Nate Johnson and Curtis Rourke ahead of him. And they've got Jaden Mayava, who I know who he is. I've never seen him play at UNLV. Jordan McLeod. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy. It really is. I was not expecting that at all because me and Will were looking at the list the other day. It was like, what? I mean, why is he down here so low? I mean, I think he's at least top 12, top 10 for sure. I mean, he has to be. But I think the losing really impacted the rating there.
Yeah.
I had to. In the end, I think he had some injuries too. That probably didn't help. He's been banged up some, but still, he should have been higher than that. But I think that's why Ohio State didn't go full in on him. And Will Howard, I mean, I'm happy for Will Howard. I always, hope for guys that, go to a bigger school and maybe can ball out and have success. But I just know that Ohio State's fans, they want you to be really successful. You have to do better than Kyle McCord. That's the benchmark. And I just think looking at McCord's stats and what he did, Will Howard, it's not going to be easy for him to just be that much better. It's not going to be easy. I mean, he has to actually perform really well to be better than McCord. And he's got to beat that team up north, as he's already put online. It's all over Twitter that he said, we got to beat that team up north in Michigan. So, I mean, he's got a lot of expectations. I wouldn't want it if I was him. I mean, it'd be a lot better to be at USC or Kansas State, where it's not as many expectations, especially Kansas State, USC more, but like you don't have that much pressure right now at USC as you do at Ohio State.
Exactly. You would possibly rile up our USC guy Tim if he was on, but and I'm not saying that Ohio State is a better program all time than USC or anything like that, but right now and in the recent past, we've seen USC go 5-7 a couple years ago. We've seen them; they just came off 7-5. They go 9-3 last year. Lincoln Riley's not going to be on any kind of hot seat. The entire fan base may not be completely overjoyed with that, but they'll be fine if they go into the Big Ten and they go 9-3 next year. If Ryan Day goes 9-3 next year, oh my
Dumpster
word!
fire.
Yes, people are going to be chasing him out of town.
I mean, it's just the expectations are insane. I just, like I said, I mean, I get as an athlete, you should want pressure. It makes you better, to be under pressure. So, I mean, I know it sounds, bad of me to say I wouldn't want that pressure if I was in that situation, but I'm just saying though, that expectation level for Ohio State, it is just through the roof. So I just hope Will Howard can meet it. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
But
just
it's gonna be
imagine
tough.
those games that Kyle McCord's going to be playing this year. Wonder what's going to be going through his mind when he's looking around the stadium in the Carrier Dome and they've got a noon kickoff against Wake Forest on the ACC network. And there's like, the crowd's just kind of like half there. They're not even paying attention. And
yeah, I mean, they're probably on their phones watching Ohio State on Fox. They're not even watching the game. And I mean, the thing as well is just cracks me up is like Syracuse beats Boston College 24-17. And it's like, way to go, McCord. We're back. Syracuse is so good. And it's like, I didn't get this much credit when we beat Penn State over at Ohio State. What's going on here? It's insane. I mean, the fans' expectations. I mean, Syracuse would just be happy to win 7-8 games. And if Kyle McCord could do that, they'll love him. But at Ohio State, 11-1, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks, but a 1-score loss to Michigan out the door.
yes,
You're terrible.
he's playing in the national championship game Monday night. That's the deal.
But I know you've been on for a long time, but I will ask one last question before I go. But that was hilarious. I love that. That was awesome. But on Quinnshon Judkins transferring from Ole Miss, what did you think about that? Were you surprised? Because I am. I was not expecting that. With all the good news Ole Miss has gotten in the portal, those guys coming in, that's an odd transfer.
Yes, it's a very odd transfer. It struck me the same way. Unfortunately, we're in a day and age with the situation that we have to understand that most likely, now there's a possibility, this isn't the case, but most likely somebody had an offer for him that he could not refuse, because I can't imagine he's on a team that is going to be, after Alabama and Georgia, right there in the running for an SEC championship and to make the playoff. All they have to do is duplicate what they did this year. They will be in the playoff next year. He's going to be groomed and developed. He's featured as a back that will, for an offensive coordinator / head coach who knows how to develop and scheme plays to make him look good, to prepare him for the NFL and showcase him for the next level. It's a perfect place for him to be. And on top of that, when he was not a top prospect, a blue chip prospect, that's the program, that's the coach that gave him the opportunity to show what he could do.
That's why Zay Flowers stayed at Boston College, because he was like, I'm staying at the team that, gave me my opportunity, because nobody was looking at him. But everybody wanted him that one off season, and he decided to stay at Boston College. But yeah, I agree. I mean, to me, like, I would have stayed. I mean, again, I don't know his situation. Maybe he's got a fantastic offer. Probably that's the case, like you said, but he's in a perfect offense for him. He's put up insane stats. First running back since Herschel Walker to put up 15+ touchdowns in back-to-back seasons as a running back. I mean, it's insane. And now he's leaving. It's just wild, especially, again, with all the good news Ole Miss had. I mean, I even saw a power ranking on Twitter that someone put together that had Ole Miss ahead of Bama already for next season, which I disagreed with because I still think Bama would be ahead. But Ole Miss was looking that good. And to lose Judkins, that's going to be a blow if he does end up transferring. Assuming it's probably he's not going to come back if he's entering the portal now. It's just a blow to Ole Miss and their potential next season for sure.
Now, Jeffrey, we're going to have a pretty strong indication if now I liken this to the Riley Leonard situation because as soon as he entered the transfer portal, it was all over the internet that he was going to Notre Dame. But he didn't officially make that. I think he wanted to play it like I'm in the portal, I'm looking at different places, and then he obviously signed with Notre Dame. So if we see a similar response here with Judkins in the next couple of days where boom, he's immediately ticketed to I don't know, Oklahoma. That and then even if he doesn't commit and sign, he eventually lands there, that we'll know, okay. He had a deal and it was set and they made it on the surface try to look good, but that's the deal that was
Just
set.
playing the optics
That's where he's
game.
going.
It's kind of like Julian Fleming, how he entered the portal from Ohio State, and he was rumored to Penn State for like a month, and then he finally committed there. I mean, like that was already determined, good to go. He's going to Penn State, but then it's like just wait, and he finally committed. Like it's already set in stone, but they just got to draw it out to make it look like it was a battle. It's funny.
Now, I don't know if this is out there right now. If this is just hopeful Ohio State fans throwing this out, but we had several people in the chat that were saying that he's linked to Ohio State, but I don't see that anywhere.
I mean, that'd be huge for Ryan Day and Ohio State to land him. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, rumors are rumors, but more often than not, rumors can be true these days. I mean, especially if a lot of people are saying it, but I mean, it's tough to know, man. The portal's just unbelievable. Keeping up with it and all these guys going everywhere. I mean, I've even seen, for example, you probably didn't notice it, but the other day, a safety from Indiana, Philip Dunham, he announced he was coming back to Indiana. And then an hour later, he took the post down and then he said, "Oh, wait, we had a misunderstanding. I'm not coming back to Indiana." And I'm like, how does this happen? You entered the portal to leave Indiana. Then you said you were coming back. And then an hour later, you're saying you're leaving again. This is the stage of the portal. This is the state of it right now. It's chaos.
Yeah. Well, this is an article coming in from 247 Sports. Brad Crawford, who I need to get on here. Actually, I know Brad. We follow each other on Twitter. I've had him on here probably 10 times, but it's more than 10 times. I used to have him on here all the time. Kind of lost track of him. So I should get him back on here. But Brad Crawford identified 6 schools that might be. Now, see, I don't know if this is him actually having knowledge of there being contact, or he's just looking at running back rooms and saying these would be good running back rooms. He's got Michigan, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Florida State, and Oregon.
I mean, that's just some of the biggest programs. They got deep pockets. I mean, Alabama, they could use a back. Michigan losing Corum. So, I mean, that makes sense. But I definitely, I've seen, especially, I've noticed, with basketball, when you look at transfer guys and then they have, 3 or 4 schools, it's usually 1 or 2. They just have a list. And then you're kind of just grasping at straws at first till you really get information. So it's going to be interesting. I just hate it for Ole Miss because, I mean, they were looking really good. And it was just out of nowhere. But it's wild. Definitely the portal just keeping up with it's been crazy all throughout the offseason. And there's going to be a few more big names. But Will Howard, I'm happy for you, Mark, and Ohio State that they got their guy. And I'm just hoping he's better than Kyle McCord by enough of a margin that the fans are happy, because everybody's calling him the Josh Allen of Ohio State. I'm like, you ready to crown him Josh Allen if you're not even sure Ryan Day is going to run him? I don't know. You don't even know if he's going to let him run. So it's going to be interesting. I just hope it works out. I mean, I really like seeing success stories happen, but there's a shot that this doesn't work out the way Ohio State fans want it because of how high their expectations are, and I'll just hate it if that's the case.
Yep.
But definitely, thanks for having me on, Mark. I'm sure you're about to be done, but I hope you have a great rest of the show. Everybody like and subscribe to Mark. He's working hard every day, tons of content. There's tons of news going on, and it's going to keep on rolling on, so it's going to be awesome. But thanks for having me on, Mark. Have a good night.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Have a good night. Yes, we are going to deliver as much national championship content as possible. Earlier today, Steve Dace for an hour Michigan podcast, so check that out right here at the Voice of College Football. And we also had a sit down with Nelson Hubble from Maize and Blue Review. That was a tremendous conversation for about 35, 40 minutes on Michigan football. So check that out. That was posted today. We will have Lars Hansen from Locked On Huskies on tomorrow. Don't know if we're going to go live with that, or I may just record that and we'll put that together for you as well. I'm going to commit myself to 4 Michigan-Washington videos. Number 1, I'm going to do a series history video. Number 2, we are going to do a historical comparison. Number 3 is going to be a statistical comparison. And if you checked out what we put together for Alabama and Michigan, it's not just okay, Michigan's number 30 in rushing offense and Washington's number 70. No. We dive deeper. We look at how these teams performed in different areas against the best competition in those areas on their schedule to try to make sense of it, to the degree that when we did this last year with the 2 semifinal games, I then made predictions of what the statistics would be for those particular teams in the semifinals. They're pretty close. And then, of course, my prediction video. And I missed them both during the semifinal. Now, the sharp money in Vegas would tell you that I made 2 pretty good picks because, number 1, I took Washington in the 4 points. So I took Washington +4, and then I took Alabama +2.5. And, of course, in regulation, it was a tie game. I got screwed in overtime. There we go. All right. That brings me to, I was 24-14 against the spread. Yeah, 24-14 against the spread during the postseason. It's pretty good. All right. Appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football for the national championship game. We will do our regular Big Ten live show prior to the national championship game, which I believe kicks off around 7:45. We'll be here at 6 for pregame, and we'll do postgame. And we'll be back a number of times before then. So just to get you set up for the national championship game right here at the Voice of College Football. And again, the Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. Let me get this last super chat here from Todd, who says, Will Howard reminds me of Terrell Pryor. His reviewers would not have made our scout team. His stats will go up simply from the talent around him. You would think. Better defenses in the Big Ten, though. But yes, more talent to throw to, even with the defections of Marvin Harrison Jr., Cade Stover, and others. I know when Terrell Pryor first hit the scene in college, I made fun of him all the time. He had to win me over. My son was overjoyed. He had been hearing about Terrell Pryor, and this is 2008. So this is just the outset of social media and being online all the time. But my son, who was 11 at the time, was a big Terrell Pryor guy out of the gate. And as soon as I watched him at the college level, I thought, this guy was the number 1 player in the country? He throws the ball like a shot put. I was like, they've got to teach the guy how to throw a football. Well, I quickly found out that it worked for him. He had so much arm strength that even though his mechanics, even going into the NFL, playing starting quarterback at one time for the Raiders, that's how he threw the football. It just looked, I won't say the word, backwards to me. But Terrell Pryor, I believe, had one of the most underrated careers based on the list that I've seen him on, or he is not made, that people have made evaluations about quarterbacks during the BCS era. Terrell Pryor, how many quarterbacks can say this? He won 3 MVPs of major bowl games. I'm sorry. 2. They lost the 2008 Fiesta Bowl. He would have won the MVP, but then they gave up a late touchdown to Colt McCoy. And who's the running back that scored that touchdown against Ohio State in the last 15 seconds? So Terrell Pryor and Ohio State lost to Texas, the Texas team that could have been playing in the national championship game that went 12-1. Great Fiesta Bowl game, 24-21. And then Terrell Pryor, his sophomore team, of course, defeated Oregon in the Rose Bowl, and he was the MVP. And then his junior year team defeated Arkansas in the Sugar Bowl, and he was the MVP. And then he was all set up for a big senior season. And then what happened? Something that is completely unthinkable now. Players wanted some tattoos, and that's against the rules. They wanted some tattoos. They traded in their trinkets, their awards, for some tattoos. And that completely, just think about how different the Ohio State football landscape would be. For better or worse, I don't know. It's kind of tough to get too much better, but for better or worse, because Jim Tressel would have kept his job. And that Ohio State team in 2011 would have been in the hunt for a national championship. I don't know if they would have won it. LSU was really good. And of course, Alabama won it. But that team was stacked. And they all got suspended. You're talking the top 5 offensive players. And then Jim Tressel loses his job, and in steps Urban Meyer. But if Jim Tressel keeps his job, who knows how long would Jim Tressel have coached at Ohio State? That's just kind of odd to think about. That would have changed the trajectory of everything in the Big Ten. Don't know what would have happened. All right. And Urban Meyer won a national championship, but of course, Jim Tressel had done the same thing. All right. Appreciate y'all being here. The Voice of College Football. Lock in on our national championship content, and we will see you sometime on Friday. Of us are on the internet pretty much all the time. It's fun. You get to socialize, you get entertained, and in this day and age, it's pretty much necessary. And even if you're one of those people that's not on the internet all the time, you know what is? Your personal information. And there are people out there trying to hack you all the time. They want your email address, they want your phone number, they want your place of employment, and they want to do bad things with it. There's also fairly legitimate corporations and companies that want your information. They want it for marketing purposes. They're going to buy it. They're going to sell it. They're going to trade it. At the very least, it's annoying to you. It's a nuisance. It's aggravating. Your email gets cluttered up with spam email. You get robocalls all the time. That's at the very least. At the worst, it's a threat to your family, to your friends, to your personal information, to your banking, to your finances, to your security, to your safety, to your identity. It can be pretty serious. This video is sponsored by Aura. I got hacked, and it was pretty obvious. This was about 8 or 9 months ago, and there were red flags all over the place. And I didn't exactly know what to do, but I knew I needed to do something quickly. I mean quickly. I researched 8, 10, or 12 companies immediately. I went all over the place. I asked people. I was online looking for the best company that could serve my needs and secure my information. You know who I found? Aura. And I'm glad I did. It was amazing. I contacted them. They got right back to me immediately. Their customer support is phenomenal. Their customer service is first-rate, friendly. They are detailed. They know what they're doing, and they do it right, and they will protect you. In addition to everything I just mentioned, they've got a password keeping service. They keep your credit score. They notify you anytime there's a possible data breach. This has happened to me a number of times. I'm getting notifications all the time when there's a possible compromise to my credit score or anything that I don't want. They've got a VPN that will allow you to browse the internet anonymously. It's amazing. And again, customer service support available 24/7. Click the link in the description section below and get 2 free weeks of Aura. Protect your finances, protect your information, protect your privacy, protect your identity. I did, and I'm glad I did. Aura, thank you so much for what you've done for me and now for my Voice of College Football community.